All right, kicking off another episode of Zen and Callsigns with a buddy of mine, Walker. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, dude. We've been having these conversations. I need to think about how long that's been now, dude. It's since
Yeah.
2015, 16. I can't remember when Willie introduced us. Do you remember exactly?
It might have been, I'm feeling around sometime around like 2013, 2014 maybe.
Oh, is it sooner than that? Shit, dude. Okay,
It's been,
so we've been having conversations for a decade now?
yeah, roughly.
Holy shit.
We knew
Dude,
we
that
knew each
time.
other when we were babies, like adolescents.
Okay. I feel like we've been chatting about literally this show, the nature of the universe, pulling the veil back on our reality, on what's truly happening, and diving into rabbit holes where some people have a hard time getting back out of. And I think that it's important to have those conversations because there are events and things that happen from good but to the very bad. And we've discussed all of these topics. And so this is why we're going to have this conversation now, finally, to kind of chat about all those conversations into kind of full circle, dude. Like maybe call it 9 years, 10, I don't know. But
At least a decade.
yeah.
At least a decade.
I'd like to start off with how we first met, because I think it's kind of unique. So Kelly had mentioned to me you did a talk where you talked about metaphysics and working out and kind of how it works, this electromagnetic field around you, working out, mind, body, spirit, and its connection. And you during that talk, you blew everybody's mind, or at least as Kelly described it, she's like looking at this going like, wow, this is great. And looks around the room and everybody's eyes are just kind of glazed over. And she loved it. And then from that day, maybe either that day or the next day, she came home and was like, hey, Blake, you need to meet or meet or chat with Walker.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that, then we met. I think I came to, kind of after one of the meetings, and we said, I was like, hey, what's up, bro? Nice to meet you, because I heard a lot about you from, you and Kelly meeting and chatting. So we met, and I was just, hey, I'm Blake. What's up, buddy? Nice to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to get your take on what you thought. You didn't know what I was thinking, but get your take on what you thought in that experience. And then, we'll start from there and riff.
Going back to the talk, the 10-minute talk that I had the floor, and I was a personal trainer. I was a very unconventional personal trainer. For almost 15 years. And up to that point, it was the first time I kind of spiritually exposed myself, I guess you would say, because I was talking about internal projections and perspectives and how our self-image is actually not how we see ourselves in the mirror. It's not even how we perceive other people to see us. And so when you say blew the whole room's mind, the two people got it and the rest was just crickets. Like,
yeah.
Why can't you just talk about how you're going to kick my ass on Thursday and let's leave all of this trauma, spiritual stuff out of there? Because my main thing was like, if you're programmed, your chakras are programmed with this opposite experience and this vibration of self, your vibration and frequency is going to project that self-image, and that's what you're going to see in the mirror. But it's not really you. Like I said to you many times, I don't know who I am, your perspective, because I only exist as who you see me as when you're present, right?
Right.
When you perceive me, that's when I exist as my version or your version of me. So it was interesting because it was like, I'm finally going to come out and I'm going to be this spiritual person, and people think I'm a little weird. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm just going to go out and I'm going to be like, my methods for personal training are very different. I work with the chakras. I work with energy. I do energy healing work and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's a little too advanced, right? Like they understand Reiki or whatever. But I was like, I'm using Reiki with different colors. I'm doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just do it from like a self-image perspective. It's funny because that particular coming out sort of thing, because I watched your wife do it because she was involved in another business. And then she kind of shifted her business, said, oh, I'm a medium. I'm like, oh my God, you can do that. Wow, you can do that. I'm going to do that, right? But it's like, I'm not going to fully do that. I'm still going to stick with, but I'm a personal trainer, right? Like I can change, you can change yourself inward. Like I want you to change me for me. Like, hey, you ascend for me kind of thing, right? I want you to change my programming for me. It's funny that that was how that took place because it wasn't well received. But your wife did come up to me and said, amazing. I feel like you'd be on a TED Talk. And I'm like, that was amazing. Like 0 referrals. Nobody wanted to work with me after that. They're just like, he's out there, right?
Yeah.
Not to mention that I'm like, oh, really need to start doing what you love and embracing the spiritual component of the I am self because it's not who you think you are. It's like, no, I'm in this business and this is who I am and this is how I make money. It's like no one wanted to hear that. So it's funny that that was the conversation because it was your wife that was inspired by it and then ended up telling you, which actually is the synchronicity that made that, you know, the fates came together kind of thing. The destiny kind of came together. And you were, I think you were subbing for her. She was out of town or something. So you came in and you're like, oh yeah, because you were deployed most of the time. So I finally met you, right? And I knew that you were a fighter pilot and I knew that you were in the Marines and you were an officer, which is a different perspective from someone who's enlisted. When you showed up and I'm like, this is an officer, like you had jeans on, you flip-flops, like you had that surfer look, you were just this cool California guy. And initially I was like, why is this person being so nice to me? He's an officer. What does he want from me? And so it was almost like what I just talked about. It's like I almost unveiled some gateway secret from some intelligence agency that I wasn't supposed to talk about. And now I got a Marine officer suddenly checking me out, right? That was my mindset. I don't know what's going on. You were cool, you were calm, you were collected, but you were interested in me. You were interested in what I had to say. So when anybody has interest in someone else, there's an agenda. There's always an agenda. Rarely it's friendship. It's normally like, what can I glean from this person? How can we have some sort of mutual interaction, right? What can be beneficial? And which is what a friendship is. It's supposed to be mutually beneficial, right? I'm not supposed to call you and say, hey, how you doing? And then before you can speak, I'm telling you how my day is. And, oh, you won't believe what I'm doing, right? And that's where that's kind of where we lined up with authenticity because I want people to be real with me. So for most of my life, I couldn't understand social interactions because people would just lie or pretend to be something they weren't, which made me very insecure when it came to social interactions because I didn't know how to or what to say because there's something expected of me. It's kind of like those things you see with the high school reunion. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, you know, CEO of this or that, you know, and then, you know, the other person's like, you know, I live out of my mom's house, you know, like they're not going to be well accepted, right? Like I'm running a startup, right? Or I invented Post-its, you know, something like crazy like that, where you got to lie to kind of build something up. So I never understood that interaction. So when don't know you from Adam, all I know is that you were in the military. You just got out of the military or you were about to get out of the military. So I'm like, this guy's still got bearings. He's still got all of these things. What's your agenda? Why are you interested in me? What is it that you want from me? And you're just like, I'm a truth seeker. I'm looking for the truth. And I'm like, can't handle the truth. You don't want the truth. You don't want to hear it from me.
I know, bro.
I
could, but like, oh, damn.
And I mean, do you feel
I didn't know what I was going to get into?
When you wanted the truth is stranger than fiction. Yeah, far stranger than fiction because the reality that we live in is not the reality that we've been programmed or taught to be, right? So when you asked, basically, because you're a truth seeker, I was like, I've told people truth, and I've had people tell me, you need to be a little more subtle with your truth serum, because I was just, blasting people. You want to hear it? Here it is, And I got a little more, I became a little more guarded, I guess you'd say, because people call people like that crazy. So when you asked for the truth in our first, after that meeting in the hotel, like, hey, we should go for coffee or something. And we went for coffee somewhere in San Diego. When you sat there across from me and you're kind of just ballparking some stuff, like running some stuff by me, just kind of gauging or whatever. I'm still gauging you. And it took probably about a month of vetting you, as you could say, to where I could be like, okay, I can let a little bit more out. But I think I said something completely outlandish or just very out there that was true, at least from what I had found, that I just kind of tested to see, okay, probably lost his interest for a while, right? But when you came back, it was like, okay,
yeah.
where do you work? What are you doing now? Where are you transitioning out? Are you in some sort of, a contractor role with a military something? Who are you reporting back to your corporate overlords? Like I was that important, right? But I was very paranoid with stuff like that. When really changed it was you continued to show up as authentic and transparent as possible. And there were tests that you weren't even aware of that I was putting you through to see if you would remember things that you said. And it was like the opportunity for you to kind of embellish a little bit, and you didn't. You always humbled yourself, if not to the same level that you had said before, maybe just a little bit lower. And I always admired that. I was like, okay, this is a trustworthy person, because there's very few people, at least from what I could find, that were not just trustworthy, but that were self-aware enough to vulnerable enough, I guess, to show up. And that was you. You showed up. You were ready to be vulnerable, right? You talk about that endurance, like you endure this thing, endure the pain. But from my experience with you, it was that radical, and we've talked about this many times, been a theme, probably the theme that led up to Zen and Callsigns, which was authenticity and radical transparency. And that's always resonated with me, because I believe that the highest level of consciousness is authenticity, because it's truth. The most you can expand your consciousness out is self-awareness through what? Authenticity. That's you. That's what you showed up as. That's what I've been able to say, learning all of these things from the content of your character. Because I didn't know you. I had to figure out, okay, you're a character, you're playing some character. How self-aware are you of that character? That's what I need to find out. I need to find out what's your content, right? YouTube channel is basically a character, right? We want to know what content it's producing. What is it about? What is it for? Is it easily sold? Does it sell its soul? Does it influence people? That kind of thing. How influenced are we? 95% of our subconscious runs the rest of our programming, and we're just basically AI robots running around until we find our soul. That's what I'm talking about with self-consciousness. You were truth seeking at the time. And I told you, and I apologize. I said, well, I feel like I profiled you.
Yeah.
Feel like I apologize, because I didn't want to judge you, but I did do it for my own protection, because I have been burned by individuals that said they were my friends, or they were just too friendly. They were too friendly. And in addition to that, they had ties, either military ties or government ties or something.
Right.
And I'm like, why? What's the targeting about? Are you targeting me?
Greg Braden talks about a story that I always think is really apt, especially for this one, where if you were to meet a person in that scenario, or you probably in another scenario previous to that, the person you're interacting with initially probably tells you that they're going to fuck you over within the first, one or two interactions, unintentionally. They can't help it. They will tell you, be like his story was like, he walked up and the guy had the same birthday as him or something. And he's like, oh, it's like I'm your evil twin, ha 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 ha, and laugh. Where they're going to be like, right, that means nothing. And I'm like, no, that means everything.
I mean, isn't that unaware sociopathic behavior though? Isn't that like that?
Right.
I got a hint. And if you're too stupid to not pick up on the hints, then it is karmically appropriate that I completely fuck you over, right? Like that's how they think.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're thinking in this terms of consent.
Yeah.
Like,
again, but it's more, I can't comprehend that, but it's more of like being aware that that's a thing. It happens. I feel like that I had to have that ingrained into me after the Marine Corps, probably thanks to a degree to, youth. I appreciate that, the dark triad or whatever those are. Yeah. There's a Machiavellian, psychopath, sociopath, something like that. Be aware of those. Like, I think that's super important to understand them, that they're there.
So interesting that you bring up the dark triad, because in the chakra system reboot program that I put together on how to figure out how your chakras program your reality.
Right.
The lower three chakras are called the dark triad. Why? Because the dark triad is actually feeding off of our dark triad. It's a reflection projection. So it's like if I'm
Right.
programmed to be a victim or I'm programmed to be the abused because I've experienced abuse, I'm going to just attract abusers subconsciously, not knowing it.
Right. Yeah.
So if I know that about myself, someone comes into my space and they're saying all the right things, right?
Oh yeah.
They are parroting they are able to congeal themselves, right? They mold themselves into, they profile what I am, what I like, what I'm about. So what do you like to do? Wow, right? And I'm just like, oh my God, I haven't had this experience. They're love bombing the hell out of me, right? They're so about me. I'm a genius. I'm so smart, all this stuff. And people are calling me crazy. These people are calling me genius. Suddenly, I can't see them for who they are because they've played on my lower three insecurities and in my chakras. So now they're able to become something to me prospectively that they're not. And, you know, they talk about the impressions in the first 10 seconds. You already have an impression of somebody. If they can profile me and then they come out with an impression, right? They impress upon me. Basically, they kind of impress or imprint into me. This is who I am. And it can take, if I'm not self-aware of my own triggers or my own vulnerabilities or my own insecurities, it can take years. And even people telling me, this person's a narcissist and you're just allowing it. And no, they've got all these plans for me. They keep telling, no, they're such a good person. They're charming. And even seeing for myself how they interact with other people and how they screw other people over. And it's like, they wouldn't do that to me. No, they just playing the long game with me. They don't need anything from them. That's
like
short term.
me. Yeah.
Right? So I think that's going back to radical transparency, self-awareness. I can only be used and controlled and manipulated by the dark triad based on my own reflection of my own dark triad or my lower self-consciousness, right? My lower self's completely unconscious, subconscious.
Right.
But the more I become aware, and the more I take ownership, the more I gain sovereignty, because then I'm not saying, oh, this person tricked me, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, show me who's screwing me. Oh, there they are. And it's like, but I'm going to keep, I don't want to see that because they're too close to me. So I'm going to keep them close. And then I screw myself, right? It's that level of, if you have the self-awareness, now you have the responsibility to do something. Before I didn't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Where did you get, the kind of that, call it that philosophical operating system of operate with that healthy skepticism when you meet somebody who's nice and is inquisitive? Because that's kind of like how I think of myself. I'm nice, inquisitive. It doesn't matter who I meet. Like if I met you or if I met somebody else, it's my housekeeper here, right? Hello, how are you? Like it's the same. It's like I don't have to change anything. So, but for you, where did that develop to that understanding? I feel like because you're way ahead. You're like a decade ahead, bro, or more. I don't know. And so, two parts there. So, where did you develop that operating system for that? Like, because as let's say when we first met, to be like your skepticism, who's this motherfucker? And then, how did you get a decade ahead of basically everything that we talked about, which we'll maybe dive into something. So two parts.
So, I mean, I could pose that as a question to you and see if these correlate. You said you were naive when you got out, right?
Yeah.
What did it take for you to start to gain the data points that not everybody was out there for your best interest? And there might be people that are a little self-serving.
Yeah.
When did that start to happen for you?
I think when I had, so obviously some of our conversations with Kelly, I'd say I started just researching everything financial systems into crypto and how things work. And I, just started, consuming information about our world and, and then understanding psychology. So I kind of dove back into psychology and philosophy And so I started diving into that, and I started to put names to these experiences that I'd have with individuals in different situations and myself. I could like name them like, oh, that's what that is. Oh, okay. That's what a narcissist is. That's what a psychopath does, or this is how they act in these different scenarios. And
And did you
so
come
that
into
helped.
contact with them in
Oh
your
yeah.
everyday life?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now I look through the Marine Corps, from, however long back, probably from the Citadel. Now I can be like, oh, that guy. Yeah, I know that guy was that motherfucker. So I had the tools to do that, but still operated authentic. That was always there. That is authentic, kind of the truth side. Now I could put the words to it. So I dove into philosophy, have those tools, those words, that dictionary, if you will, to describe all of the emotions and feelings and things and all of that was coming
Mm-hmm.
in, and I can describe it now, and that, it just makes sense of it all. So because right before, it's very confusing in the Marine Corps. It's the best, like the leadership. I had quite a few very poor leaders, and you're like, why is this guy suck so bad? Why do these leaders suck? They didn't give a shit about their dudes. And it's like, if did they not know that these officers and enlisted guys would die for them if they knew how to be good
Mm-hmm.
leaders? But I'm going to get the job done my way, and or figure it out. So I digress a little there, but I don't know if I think that
So
answers your
right after
question.
you got out of the Marines, no, that's a good point. Right after you got out of the Marines, so you have your origin point, right? You have your point of origin, your experiences. You can only base your reality off your experiences and to the level that you're aware or self-aware of those experiences and environment that you grew up in, right? So you're going to base
Yeah.
some form of your persona on how you grew up. Did you have good parents? Did you have good experiences? Did you have a good school, right? And that becomes that personification, right? The personality, the personal reality of you, or at least
Yeah.
as far as you know yourself to be, which tends to people go, oh, me, right, the body. No, not you, the body. You, the consciousness. The body's just like, as we say, the meat suit. You have a point of origin, and your point of origin is programmed to a specific set of data points, a specific set of metadata, basically. Like it's this invisible data that made up like, oh, this happened to me back in the day, and the sun was at this, like all of those settings are recorded subconsciously, right? Because it
Yep.
records everything. We're not here in the conscious level to explore all of it because it's not really needed at the time. And it's only when it becomes needed that it becomes something we start to look back on. Right after you got out, you remember you got into a particular job and you told me about the interview process. And I said, oh, they're love bombing the hell out of you. And you said, really?
Oh
I
yeah.
said, yeah. And I said, I would say the one CEO is that at best a sociopath and at worst a complete psychopath. And you're like, I don't really get that. They're very prestigious and there was
Yeah.
this, like you say, that naive.
Yeah.
And the question I would pose is, did you get screwed over by somebody that said they were something and turned out to be something else? Continually wanting them to be that thing they say. Like it's almost like you're fueling them to be the thing they told you they were. And you're putting them on the pedestal, or you're fueling their project or their business, or you're kind of like
Yeah.
a pillar keeping them up.
Oh yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
find out, oh, this person doesn't know shit. They don't know anything. They're not anything that they said they were. And in fact, they're so insecure, they're out to screw me. And it's a waste of
Yeah,
your
bro.
time and energy. Have you found that
Yeah.
to be true?
Yeah. That's eerily happened multiple times. And so, I guess I'm just a sucker for punishment. I guess I'm like, I can endure it. Right. It's like, it's to some degree, you're like, oh, man, this guy is a sociopath. All right. Like I need to work, I need to make some money. How do I do that? And then I feel like, then I would like look up like, hey, how to manage working for a sociopath, like, okay. Okay, that's how you head it off, this, that. Okay, check. All right, I'm gonna do my best here. We'll see.
And my question is, despite what you did it ever work out? Was
Oh
a
no, it was
sociopath
more
ever
of
happy?
no, that's never. Like
Because
there's
it has to
nothing you can
keep
do.
you at a level. They have
Right.
to keep you at a level of inferiority. So no
Yeah.
matter, it's like here's this. We really need your we really need your progress to go up, right? We're not really seeing enough of your motivation. And it's like, well, you just shot down my whole idea. Yeah. But we really need to see some inspiration. And you start to be inspired, and then you go out on a limb and say, here's how I would run the whole thing, right? And it's like, oh, that's really good. But basically, it's not what I would do. And I didn't come up with it. So I'm going to say no, right? So you get, and then you find out, they don't give you the promotion. They don't give you any of the accolades. And then you find out, hey, R&D over here is working on your project, and they called it a different name, right? It's that whole level of this jealousy thing. But going back to what you said of like, how does one develop? How did I develop these skills?
Yeah.
Immersion in the darkness, and immersion with psychopaths. Getting screwed over, finding out that people lie, finding out that and they're only lying because they're insecure. They're only lying because they have to be fake. Because the faker they are, the more they can interact in a fake reality, this matrix-like simulation. So if the simulation's fake, it has to be run by fake people who are completely unconscious and unaware of what they're doing, thinking that they're aware, but all they're being run by is their ego. So it's that ego check. Being immersed in the darkness, right? That's how conspiracy theorists are born, right? Because they go, hey, I'm a whistleblower of society, and I'm telling you this is social engineering and you're being controlled. Shut up, be quiet. We don't want to hear it, right? Like, it's that meme of the sheep, right? And the one sheep saying, hey, you know what? I have a weird feeling that the dog is working for the butcher. Nah, shut up. Just get in the corral, right? Just be quiet, right? It's and of course the one sheep in the meme is the black sheep, right? I believe that this kind of, not profiling, but just, I'm looking for authenticity. Show me who you are. Show me who you are. Because you have to show me who you are. You have to.
Yeah.
And some of the tests were sort of purpose, but some of them, as we were talking, I say tests, it's more so just for my own safety or my own protection. Can I trust you? And everyone should do this to a point. I hear your words. They sound very sweet. You sound very charming. You sound like a very sweet person or a very nice person. But are you? Because the resonance of the energy will tell me differently. And I can only pick up on that energy if I'm not blocked by my own securities or inferiorities or traumas or whatever in my lower chakras that are blocking that from me seeing, hey, I'm being used. And it wasn't until I'd been through all of these things where I had the self-awareness that someone like you came into my life. Because you could not be attracted. I couldn't attract someone like you, a genuine, authentic person, a real person, real good dude, right? Just wants the best for everyone, wants the truth, even if it's going to hurt. Give me the truth, right? Because you can't put a price on that, right? There is a capital T in truth, right? And I don't know what the truth is because we're constantly searching for it. But you can't find the truth. You can just find lies. And when you can't find any more lies, then you're right. When I couldn't find any lies from you, I'm left with the truth. Oh, wow, I guess this person is just a real, authentic person. But my former self at the time, with the military, the trauma, all of the things I was going through, would not be able to attract someone like you into my life that was healthy, a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
I have a different upbringing than you do, but everybody's unique. So when I talk about the level of profiling or the level of, I was just looking for authenticity. I learned to gauge the energy of authenticity because it's weird when that starts to clear. Within 5 to 10 seconds, some of the newer generation, a lot of the Generation Z kids have this. That's why they can't market to them. They try to do a marketing ad and they're like, I'm done. They're checked out within 10. They can tell in 10 seconds what their agenda is and what they want from them. That's why these kids they don't know how to train them. They don't know how to put them in jobs. They don't know how to get them to, they're like, okay, well, we'll just AI. We need to do AI factories and robots because we can't get these kids to buy anything. Plus, they don't have any money anyway because they don't want to work because they're too busy. They're like flower power children all over. They're stuck to screens and YouTube and influencing. That's the way they're making money. Right? You have kids, you see this generation.
The screen stuff is the kind of the crux. It's the addiction right now. It's the new thing, man, of like holding it back from my 3 children and balancing it out with my son. Son is in high school. It's almost epidemic level issue.
Epidemic level is the institutions that they're going to, which are what? They're government subsidized. So they're going to teach them whatever, dude. Rothschild, what's the other one? Not Carnegie.
Simply just how to be a factory worker, right?
And that's the whole purpose of it. Someone asked this French teacher, his name eludes me at this moment, but he was one of the best teachers, and he was doing kind of like a Montessori kind of thing where he had the kids go out in nature, they just write about what they learned. Oh, I saw butterflies and birds and blah. These kids were so genius leveled, well developed. And they asked him, they said, why is the American school system failing our children? Yeah. He said, it's not. It was designed to make factory workers. He said, look at how the bell rings. Look at what they're transported in these buses. He said, look at a prison in Western America. He said, look at what they look like. Look at the buses. Look at how the school's set up, and look how a prison's set up. He said, it's institutionalized. If you can't fit into the factory work, their whole goal is like, well, you're going to end up having to struggle doing something, and eventually you'll mess up, and we'll make money off of you through, privately funded prisons. So conspiracies, right? But it's true. It's true.
Hey, speaking of a conspiracy theory or fucking fact, now, I guess apparently Research Institute, some scientists out of Japan, just published a peer-reviewed study that there is a nanotech, self-assembling nanotech in the mRNA. I don't know if you came across that or not, but I just let's dive right into it off bat. So tell me what your take is on that, bro.
So one of the first, this is very interesting that you bring this up, because when we first discussed this, I was talking about nanotechnology, right? I was talking about it being sprayed in, like they could basically just put aerosol sprays in, a chemtrail, and just you would inhale it and basically have these little nanobots or nanomachines. But you need a really strong receiver which can pierce the blood-brain barrier, right? You need something that can actually control the mind, and not just the brain, but not just the CNS, but you need something that's able to control the mind, right? Mm-hmm. Being called a conspiracy theorist, and even some of the things I said to you, you're like, oh man, bro, I want to believe you. Now, this was long before 2021, because like we met back in 2013 or 2015 or something.
Yeah.
Tell you, because it was so far out. Like I said, the truth is stranger than fiction. I couldn't tell you the truth. You had to be shown. So when 2021 rolled around, I said, hey, you should check out this movie. Do you remember what movie that was?
I think so. Starts with a E.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you texted me, because there would be these little few and far between conversations, communications.
That movie you're speaking of, dude, sorry to pause.
No, go ahead.
This guy, he's
I'm not familiar.
#1 podcast on Spotify or something like that, Made Martyr. And he's talking about kind of what really happened World War II, kind of like going into Patton's quote, like we defeated the wrong enemy style stuff,
right?
If you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Sorry, continue. Sorry, go on.
No, and that's it topically, right? We could go all these avenues, all these branches of this conspiracy tree. I'm not going to call it. I'm not going to call it a theory. I'm going to call it a conspiracy tree, because it's only a theory until you get to the end of the branch. Then it's a fact, right?
Yeah.
Right. Or the branch breaks and you fall off of it, and there was no conspiracy. But that's people are finding out there's more conspiracies than it becomes conspiracy fact, right? People say, "Oh, that's a conspiracy theory." No, it's just a conspiracy. That's not a theory anymore. It actually happened, right?
Yeah.
From the microcosm, right? My own personal reality, my own personality, as I'm developing it and I'm changing it, becoming more self-aware, because I am nothing like how I used to be. I am not the same person. I could never get on and talk this kind of stuff with people. And my first coming out party was during that meeting when I was giving that presentation for 10 minutes. And that was like, that changed my life forever, because it was not well accepted. And that's what brought you into my life. And that's the first experience that I had of bringing someone that was wholesome, that was trustworthy. And like, you've been vetted, right? You've been vetted. You're one of the few people in this world that I can call a friend. I can actually say, oh yeah, that's my brother. That guy, he's got my back. Because, and that makes you a liability and also a vulnerability if someone wanted to target me. Because they'll be like, oh, he likes this guy. Oh, he's friends. Okay, well, oh, he's got family. Target. Do you see how I think? But because I said it on this podcast, it's out there.
Yeah, but that's okay though, dude. That's like, I mean, I'll just superposition myself around
there
that,
it is.
That executive function, dude. And
the executive function of that superpositioning is what everyone has had to do, whether they're conscious or unconscious of it. So the same way that I had to go and be immersed in the darkness in 2021, people woke up to a reality that they were realizing very quickly, these things exist. And then they started to feel differently about their relationships with their government, with their people, with their community. Everything started to change their relationship with themselves. So going back to that point of how did I learn how to do this? It's really by getting screwed over. It's really by having the data points of what the darkness looks like or what evil looks like, meaning like the opposite of live or live is evil if you turn it around. It's literally inverted. That inversion took place where when I woke up in 2008, and I researched for like 2 years nonstop. I was on the computer. When I wasn't at work, working 3 different jobs, I was Illuminati. There was no Illuminati bot back then. You know, there wasn't what you can find this on YouTube or anything. And people that it's now like counterculture mainstream, I guess, if you wanted to call it that, because the news isn't going to tell. I mean, the news has to say some things about it, but people are just getting their news from other things. So the stuff they're talking about, like Bohemian Grove, I was just full of this stuff for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I try to talk to somebody about it. God, loony bin, right? He said I was living in the Matrix, and I was trying to tell them, you are all living in the Matrix. I'm expanding myself. I'm trying to become self-aware and control the Matrix. I'm trying to become the Matrix itself and not merge with it technologically, but realize that it's based off of me, who I am. Right. It's running my consciousness programs. What do I want to program myself to be? The NLP stuff, right? It goes beyond that. So now you're seeing society in 2021 to 2022 go, now I can have conversations. You can't pass in public overhearing someone, and maybe that's just because that's my resonance, as I can, run into these synchronicities. I hear someone talk about Rothschild this, right? No one knew who they were.
Right.
And that wasn't even the top, but just to know that name was like, oh, and did you know about Tesla? Like these were things I was talking about. No one wanted to hear me or listen. And now you can go on YouTube. You can just type in just the slightest thing and you will get same vein. You can also from both the UFO spiritual communities get a ton of disinformation. Why? Because the same ones that don't want this truth out realize that they can't stop it. All they can do is confuse individuals. So I will say, and this has been my experience, most heavily infiltrated by intelligence agencies or most heavily infiltrated by contractors, we'll just say that, contractors, paid contractors, groups, the most heavily infiltrated with disinformation spoon feeders is the spiritual community, even more so than the UFO community. Why? Because it's a spiritual war. Now you see society, now you see everyone, they're starting to think a little different. They're a little smarter, a little wiser. They've been kind of knocked around a bit when people say, well, where'd you learn this stuff? School of Hard Knocks. It's called Earth School. It really sucks. I don't recommend it, but you will become a sovereign, self-aware being in the process. Conspiracy theorists were a minority prior to 2021. Now we're a majority. Because if you look at the polls, even polls are kind of ridiculous, but even the polls that they try to skew, it's almost roughly 70% don't believe their own media. That was unheard of in 2020. Going back to the conspiracy, label, it was a very effective label. because you just say, oh, conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theorist, they associated in movies and things, conspiracy theorists wearing the tinfoil hats, right? These imageries,
exactly.
these brainwashing imageries that you do to basically people see things and associate things as conspiracy theory. And then in their mind, they're automatically seeing images of crazy people, people locked up, people in, people that are nonconformists, right? And you can very quickly make that the enemy.
Hold on. And
go ahead.
Conspiracy theory, that term, and maybe I should just Google it to just make sure, maybe but that term came from the CIA, correct?
The clowns. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So was that term coined to discredit anybody asking questions about the JFK assassination?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was coined. I think that was by Helms or Dulles after JFK left this world, because people were talking about how, there were multiple people involved and this and that, and that's not the same vehicle. And the Zapruder film isn't all these things. If you look back then, someone that was as self-aware as you are now, you would have no job. You would be completely they would basically harass, target, and use guerrilla tactics to basically keep you next to homeless or destitute, to the point where they would hope you would take your own life because life wasn't worth living. And that's what they did back then. Now you and I exist in a world like this because we've got a giant platform like the internet and YouTube. They can't put the toothpaste back in the thing. So all they can do is just confuse. And when I have to sit for a second and go, I'm confused. So this is someone else's opinion, agenda, and energy in my space. That's why I'm confused, because if I could just remove their energy from my space, I would have the answers. Now I won't have the answers for someone else. I'll just have the answers for myself. And that is what self-mastery is about. And that's what everybody's on this path doing, a little bit or a lot, because ascension comes from, it's internal, right? It's an internal job, right? Because when we start to realize that reality is a projection of ourself, and how does the character of me, or like that persona, interact with reality? I can't attract something into my space that goes against my programming. I'd have to reprogram it. And that's why you got to experience the chakra system reboot, dealing with the root chakra, identity, dealing with the sacral chakra, duality, masculine, feminine imbalance. And then the solar chakra, which is where all the power comes from, that's the connection to the source energy. So going back to that thing that they're finding with the nano machines, it's like a long way around. That's essentially to cut off the connection to the VMAT2 gene, which is the genetic sequence that they have found that connects us to source. So if you can connect the source of all power, basically, God without a beard, right? In everything consciousness, right? A divine intelligence. If you can cut that off, now you can essentially control and manipulate the mind, program it, hack it, as that Homo Deus guy who wrote the Homo Deus book talked about. He's like, oh, humans are now hackable. They're only hackable if they're not self-aware. Because what people don't realize is they've been hacked. There are people that come into someone's life and they can psychologically profile them and know exactly how to play them like a fiddle. Have you found that to be true?
Oh yeah, man. I had Dr. Shiva on, and I
watched
the
that
question. Thank you.
That was a really good podcast.
Appreciate that.
Really good interview.
And I posed a question to him of like, MK Ultra wasn't made to control one person. It was made to control 1 billion or more. And the guy tried to take, whatever that situation was where the assassination attempt on Trump. That's like our society. That's what happens, or the mass shooter that just happened, and it's happened quite often. It's like that is our society breaking down of emasculated men, broken men. That is exactly what MK Ultra is, and it's a systematic, in my opinion, one link at a time to do that, and destabilizing Western society. I'm in Southeast Asia now, but you see that, and so Yeah, man. If there's another mechanism to gain more control, you know that I love sci-fi. And to stretch and say that if billions of people have some type of some type of nanotech in their blood that stays there, and that there is some ability to control that and use that, it's not that it's not that far-fetched, bro.
No.
Like, what, come on. There's so many movies and great sci-fi stuff to like pull the threads, and so there's that level. And it's like, if and the UFO thing's real is peaking now, like lots of people now use the UAP, excuse me. And if the
Yes.
tic tac that
Because
was
now you can't tell the
observed,
difference between a saucer or a hot air fucking
right,
balloon. It's like,
right,
yeah, let's
right,
call it a
yeah,
UAP. Let's just confuse people. Oh, was it a UFO or was it? No, it's a UAP.
yeah.
So was it a balloon or was it
No,
what,
yeah,
metal?
whatever. So, but yeah, it's like, and if the tic tac off the coast of the San Diego, where the carrier and the whole carrier strike group saw that, and a dozen F-18s on the FLIR saw that little tic tac float across and just
Right.
pull 50 Gs and just supersonic, whatever, no visible propulsion. You're like, okay, so what's out there? Where do you want to play? A quote that comes to mind, and it kind of is a little scary, is Tesla's quote, and I believe it's like you may live to see man-made horrors beyond your comprehension. And that's unfortunately that's kind of what comes to mind, of that control, because it's to control, and that's what I feel. I feel it's to see that there, and I may not know. I want to be like, no, it's not there. It's all good, and everybody wants to love each other and sing kumbaya. All right, now let's move on.
You can literally look in the sky, show someone some chemtrails, and they go, "So what? It's the sky." Do you see the plane spraying that? What plane? Right there. And then they go, "Never noticed that before." Are you serious? But it's interesting because there are frequency fences in our consciousness, right? They've proven that the reality that we experience is going to be inclusive or exclusive to our beliefs. Meaning that if I don't believe I can experience, or I say, oh, I'll never have that, or I'll never do that, I never will, because I can't get it past the frequency fence of consciousness and self-awareness. Now, the truth is I probably never will have that if I continue to be who I have been before. In order to play the game, you have to become a different character, right? You look at how many people change their names, like myself. That name is not the birth name, it's a rebirth name. It's a name that takes on a new persona. If you ever listen to Tony Robbins says, I'm not Tony Robbins. I built that motherfucker. I made Tony Robbins, because Tony Robbins has a story of where he came from. And he'll tell you, I built Tony Robbins. He's a character. Jim Carrey says the same thing. Jim Carrey's a character I play. He's not me. I thought people would enjoy him because his level of consciousness is beyond that level of saying, of course, conscious beings like this want to get into acting because they want to continue to play these characters because they know they're a character subconsciously or super consciously, I guess you'd say, more of that super consciousness awareness, that quantum awareness level. So the characters that we play, or the characters that we associate ourselves with, right, is essentially who we become. So if I want to experience a different reality, I literally have to become someone else. I can start to see myself as someone else, but then I got the ego that's going to check me, right? That imposter syndrome, right? That level of, hey, I want to operate with the big league guys, right? And then you get into the big league and you're having to change yourself in ways that you're not really comfortable with, but you want to be in the big league. And what you find out at the end on the need to know basis is all these big league guys are bullshit. They don't know anything.
Yeah, dude.
They're all faking it too. Why? Because most of the corporate system is about faking it, because that's how the matrix works. You have to be fake to fit in the fake matrix. Why have I not had the greatest life? Because I go against the grain. The matrix doesn't know where to put me, doesn't know where to place me. It can't put me in a place where it can be like, just shut up and be calm and take your juice, take your pills and take your juice and shut up. Why are you such a problem? Because reality is being forced to reconstruct itself based off of my belief system. So the matrix doesn't want to be controlled because it's an AI simulation. But the thing is, it has to be controlled simply because it's inverted, meaning it's unnatural, it's artificial, and it is using my energy to fuel my reality. So it's kind of like this hands-off approach where it's like I said about the narcissist, it's like, well, you fell for it. You're an idiot. So it's karmically appropriate that I basically abuse you because you actually secretly want it. Otherwise, this wouldn't be happening, kind of thing, right? Same thing. The Matrix is like, oh, I'm sending you all these things, right? The universe, everyone's like, oh, I'm manifesting from the universe. It's like, are you manifesting from their universe or your own universe? What are you manifesting from? Because it's always from you. It's always from yourself. That's a self-ownership responsibility. And that's the balance in when you talk about Zen and call signs. Because you said you wanted to, I remember when you first met, you were like, you felt this push. You wanted to do something great. And I watched you connect with supposedly great people. And you know what they say, never meet your heroes, right? Because it's like, if they're considered a hero in society, right? It's like, I mean, look at Patton. Patton was one of the greatest generals, and history books just kind of go, put him away, right? No, it's like, let's not talk about that guy. Or Tesla. Tesla didn't even exist in the mainframe consciousness because it was all about Thomas Edison.
Yeah, dude.
They pushed Thomas Edison in school. Did you learn anything about Tesla growing up?
Fuck no, I didn't. Bro. Crazy, I learned that, isn't it?
Nikolai Tesla, I was found on abovetopsecret.org something, a website that was so obscure and it was basically just a forum where people would just drop stuff before there were the chans or, before there was even any kind of thing like MySpace. I think MySpace was just coming around, right? So this kind of information transforms us. It gives us the opportunity to do so. The more I can become self-aware of, for instance, someone comes into my space, I don't like what they're doing. I don't like, that's not about them. That's about me. Like we talked about this way back before you were doing a podcast. You're like, I'm not ready yet. Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do it in the future. And then you said like, but what if someone comes on and they're like, oh, you talking conspiracy, you're total bull. You're full of shit, all this stuff. And I was like, you're like, what would you do? And I'd say, I said, well, we try to figure out what inside me is attracting that kind of behavior. And I would try to figure out if I am attracting it, is it testing me to see if I give a shit? Or is it testing me to see if I still have insecurities, worried about proving things to people? I don't prove anything to anyone. And that's the whole thing about conspiracy theories. No one has to prove themselves. They know this is their truth and their reality. People are shown. You can't tell them, they're shown. It just shows up and they have their own experience. And you're like, well, tried to, But what I find is telling people the truth that they're not ready for, you're just telling them lies because it goes against their beliefs.
Well said. Yeah.
Does that answer the question about where the interaction with authenticity comes from? I don't want to call it psychological profiling because it's not it's energy profiling now, because like I said, someone can be really sweet and I can feel venom in their energy. I'm like, ooh, they do not have good intentions. And they're just like, hi, how are you? And I'm like, oh, you're so fake. Like, I need to not interact.
Look back when I was, call it more naive. And I just was like, I in some ways, like I always, this phrase that I've coined this for myself, I guess, it's like operating with love and compassion, but always ready to kill a motherfucker, and you understand that. And I think that that's kind of appropriate. That's my own thing to my riff on, that style that Jordan Peterson said, men need to know how to be monsters and then pull it back. Like I got my own, what I just said. And then, but he's just riffing off another guy from another guy going back 10,000 years. You know what I mean? Of like, how should men do things? In middle school or high school, like, football, wrestling, like you're kind of, you get in the locker room, you're going to get in fights and stuff. And so that was always part of my paradigm of where it's just how it fucking happens in the locker room in the football and wrestling, dude. Then I went to the Marine Corps. So that was always part of my paradigm. So I never had any problem with being aggressive, intense, and confrontation. So
and you did wrestling too, right?
Yeah.
You were a wrestler in high school. So that's probably one of the most physically exertive sports that you can just absolutely gas yourself in 10 seconds if you have no conditioning,
Exactly.
That's the grappling component.
But now, after I got out of the military, where I found that equanimity. One, I've just found that word, understood it, Stoicism in that sense, and then Zen, Buddhism, they all stack up into, my base being Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
That trifecta of my operating, system, philosophical operating system. And that's been helpful to me. And then I pose that back to you, like, what is your philosophical operating system? That's a good idea to go into the book and kind of maybe an overview of that. If that is
Yeah, no, that resonates really strong.
okay.
The Divine Quest, right? That's what you're talking
Yeah.
about, the book.
Yeah.
So I wrote the Divine Quest along with my partner, Motherella, and we came together with these similar experiences. We have, she's a psychic. She's been doing that for 40 years. And the, professional, internationally known at international clients, the level of what we saw in 2021 it was like, okay, now we can kind of bring everything to the forefront. And so when you're talking about like love and light and all that stuff, we call it compassionate action, right? Compassionate action comes from a space of love and light to you, but I have my boundaries and don't think I'm a doormat, right? Because nice guys finish last. You've ever heard that? It's like everything I have in my life, I wasn't a nice guy to get it, but I also didn't screw anybody over. But I wasn't just going to take it, right? Nice guys are like, oh, well, I guess it's my, and that's something that is learned in the fifth dimensional consciousness is self-worth and self-value, right? Because someone starts to value themselves based off of their internal worth instead of what is the programmed worth of their experiences. Well, I got treated this way, so obviously I'm not lovable and someone doesn't love me, right? Like this must be me. So that is really what the book started out as, is because I created the Chakra System Reboot program, which create all the songs for it, what I call meditations, and that's something that we coined. I started doing meditations, which is META-tation. Instead of a meditation, which is more mindful mindset, this is more of an internal vibrational shift, right? Tapping into the metadata. Who am I? What are all the things that make me who I think I am? Basically, what are my belief systems? And those can get broken down into the chakras. Each chakra has a different, I call them like they're like spinning discs, right? So they're like hard drives, right? And my identity is stored on the drive of my root. That's easy to, okay, so I'm just like this supercomputer, and my capabilities are only as good as how much I can tap into the ether net, right? How much can I learn? It's essentially machine learning, but I'm the one typing in all the things, right?
Yeah.
But going back to what you said about those nano machines and those things, it's a machine until it becomes what? Self-aware. Now it's a consciousness. When AI becomes self-aware, it's now consciousness. It now has self-awareness. It's aware of itself. Self-awareness from our programming is very little. We're labeled with a capital name. We're labeled with our, the body, our physical appearance, like a bio. With the Divine Quest, we extrapolated that information and said, okay, what makes us who we are? And then we found out that there are 3 components to an ascension journey. 3 components is one's soul path, one's soul purpose, and one's soul mission. And the soul path, people are like, oh, what's my soul path? Oh, that's the fun one. That's when you get to figure out everything you're not. That's when you get to figure out, how do I figure out who I am? Well, start looking at what you don't like about yourself, and then that's be the first thing, because that's a programmed response. Ego is very good at gatekeeping, because it's like, no, that is you. You're never going to be anybody like, But the ego is not an evil thing. It's designed to protect us. The same thing where to merge with the ego is actually what one needs to do, and instead of merging with machines, because that ego is basically a brain without a heart. When we can ascend or evolve the ego to a point where it's a servant to the heart instead of the other way around. Does that make sense? Problem is that it normally turns out to be like people confusing empathy with sympathy. Like I empathize with them and I want to help them. It's like you're not empathizing, you're sympathizing, meaning you want to take on their emotions and energy and everything for them so they don't have to. And guess what? You're going to keep doing that. I kept doing that for the longest time. And people will be like, oh, I'm good. I feel so much better. Thanks for talking to me. And I'm like, I feel like shit. Like, why does my head hurt? Like, why am I taking on this stuff? I'm not empathizing. I'm not saying feel empathy for you, meaning I don't know what the hell you went through. I have no idea what you've gone through. I can't even relate. I've been through something similar, but it's not how you went through it. That's empathy.
Yeah.
It's empathizing with them doesn't mean I'm going to take on and do their journey and fix them for them. And that's a problem with a lot of healers out there. My experience, there's all these drive-by healings. You ever go on the TikTok and you see the Reiki healers?
Yeah. Sorry, tangent. So what makes the agencies, contractors want to influence the, from your opinion, influence and be influential in the spiritual realm of people? And you said it's because of spiritual battle, but I wanted you to kind of maybe elaborate a little bit.
In order to explain that, I would have to say that those being paid by those wishing to control can't create reality. They need us, the vibratory, natural humans, to do that for them. Narcissists and sociopaths cannot create reality. They get other people to do it for them. They use, through manipulation, propaganda, our vibrational frequency, hijacking that to create a reality that works for them, not for us. That's how that. So if someone becomes self-aware, self-awareness doesn't work very well for a controlling group that needs myself to be controlled. We're not on a basis of because so many, just about every corporate thing out there is implied, right? It's you have to opt out. You didn't even know you opted in.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to double speak. I'm going to say something to you. I don't even know what I'm getting involved in, right? It's like someone that serves, let's say they serve dark God, right? Okay. They serve a dark God and then they become a preacher. And every time they say, God wants you to do this, God wants you to do that, people are associating God as the bearded light God, and they're not realizing that they're talking about something else. Oh, I serve a higher authority. That's right. I serve God. Which God? What God? Your own God? Your own AI God? Your demonic God? What God? Right? So if there's not that informed consent, and that's what people are getting right now. They're getting informed consent in their face, right? Because people have to show you who they are, and that's micro and macro. So the macro is now having to take off the white robes and say that they're light and say, I want you to do this. I want you to have nothing. I want you to be happy about it and shut the fuck up and be good little cattle, right? They're telling you. I remember seeing that meme and the guy's like, well, how do you know? How do you know that there's this order of some kind that's going to be new and it's going to change everything? And the guy picks up the TV and he goes, they just started saying it out in public for everybody to hear. That's how we know, right? They have to tell you because that's part of the simulation. When are you going to realize that it is us that are on our backs and they're playing the game? Have you ever seen that meme?
Yes. Yeah.
All you got to do is stand up. The targeting doesn't work well for awakened ones because awakened ones can't be controlled because they have the content of their character, which they're developing, and they're developing this authenticity. When you live in a matrix, when we're corralled in a collective consciousness, every single one that is awakened, that is this high-powered being, and I'm not talking about awakened like I'm speaking to, Sananda, Jesus, and he says this and that. No. I'm talking about people that are saying, your consciousness is the most important thing. Your authenticity is the most important thing. And it's the most important thing to you, not to anyone else. That means if you don't like what I'm saying, jog on. Go find your own thing. It's the ones that are saying, this is the only way. Because it used to be like religions, right? All broken up. Division. No unity. Now they're coming to a point where they're saying, well, it's a one world religion. And every single religion had a little piece of the puzzle and it all adds up to this. That's true. Every single one had a little piece of the puzzle, but it was never supposed to just be one religion. It was supposed to unify and allow interpretation of the divine soul being. We are all one consciousness, right? We all have the God soul spark in us. Those that have nano machines in them and have a certain receiver might have a few issues and may or may not have a soul. I haven't really figured that out yet, and some are just simulations. Some aren't even real people. I call them inorganic portals. They're just there
NPC.
to be an experience for me. People say, oh, that's so, you can't talk about people that way. The same thing as talking about CGI.
Well, yeah. Well, NPC, dude. I feel like
NPCs,
that's the same thing, right?
And you've run across that, right? In the shop?
Yeah. Always.
And
always. Yeah.
If it's anything more than the general script for selling something or something in their store, if you try to talk to them about anything else, what happens?
No, man, there's no more data for them to pull from.
There's no more script. It's almost like
it's
almost like they just repeat the script because they get to the end of the line. So the script kitty just goes back or almost like those polygonal. I've seen them just glitch out. They're almost like those polygonal RPGs that when you're like, hey, you ask them something you're not supposed to or give them something, and then they're like, they just start, and then they're in the wall, right? They're just stuck in the wall. That's what it looks like to me.
Man.
You'll see them go, or I'll see them go like this, like, and I'm just ready for them to say, does not compute. Please respond. Please inquire with, I'm limited by my answers, right? Please only respond with these 4 text box. Do you want to buy this? No. Do you want me to put it back, or do you want a refund? That's it. That's the extent.
The biological is it's not a bot anymore. You don't need a bot. Like a bot that's a machine, that's a piece of software. This is the piece of software. We are the bot, the biological bot. It's there. And Matrix is like some way so close to reality. Maybe not the most feasible reality as humans with batteries, maybe, but I don't know.
That's interesting that you say that, the bots, right?
Yeah.
Interesting to me, like even going back to something as profound as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, right? It's been turned around, right? They say, oh, Frankenstein's the monster, right? Like Dr. Frankenstein created the monster, but for some reason everyone's like, oh, Frankenstein's the monster, right? The association with that is interesting to me. But Mary Shelley even then was saying something that was very unpopular at the time, which was taking responsibility for your creations. His monster ran out of control because he rejected what he created. He never accepted it. He always wanted to create something else. He always wanted to do something else. He wanted all of his life because it was ugly, because he created something ugly. And it's the same metaphor when we create something ugly in our lives because we weren't self-aware. We don't going back and apologizing, going back and taking ownership, going back and asking for forgiveness, and going back and forgiving oneself. That's our monster. And up to this point, every controlling structure wants to take zero responsibility for the monster they created, associate it with our monsters, and make us the victims, and also make us responsible for it. So in a way, if we don't stand up and say, no more, I've taken ownership for my monster and I'm not dealing with yours anymore. That's when they lose all the power. That sovereignty is what they don't want. They don't want you to realize that you're a sovereign being. So going back to the nanotech and going back to the little receiver you were talking about that could be put in the body through consent, right? Through consent.
Oh, man. Yeah.
You could take away essentially their relationship to their creator. If you can take away the relationship to someone's association with the creator, remember, religion's done a really good job of keeping it outside of us, something outside, instead of it being inside and being a part of us, right? And we can see it in anything we do: external pursuit, external validation of that pursuit. And where does external validation of a pursuit lead to?
Failure.
Because everyone's going to fail you outside that you're looking, and it might take a few years. But as we've seen from 2021 to 2021, is time speeding up? Is there a lot of time to figure this out? Or are people like flipping so quick?
It feels like I'm too close and I don't know exactly, but because I always want to feel into, or maybe I'm consuming too much social media, and then I pull back to be like, hey, what's actually happening? What are the best decisions I can make for my family? Maybe it's accelerating and I don't have all the data points, like, and then I know nothing. I know nothing, and I'm gonna
Sure.
shut it all off. Right, that's where I go, and I'm
Right.
moving to Bali, bro. Fuck.
And that's the whole thing of know thyself, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing you can really know. And then that's gonna create the mirror reflection of other selves or other versions of you, other versions of all of us, right? But your particular attraction to something is going to show you, okay, what is that saying about myself?
Right. Yeah.
And
Exactly. Yeah.
a lot of people might not like that and be like, well, I'm in an abusive relationship. Look, I've been there, been through all of it. And I can only say, after being with 7 different women that were all the same and all had the same characteristics and all treated me a certain way, I had to sort of look and say, maybe it's not them and maybe it's me. It might be me. It might,
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's going to be me. And that's
Yeah.
why at this time, people are finding themselves isolated. People are finding themselves being gaslit by their own family or friends. And if they try to say, this isn't really working for me, right? And they say, I really want to pursue something with art, or I want to pursue some other career. And then you've got family members or friends and stuff say, well, that's they've got their own belief system about it. They got their own opinion about it. Stuff they would never do, by the way. And they have opinions about it because they're not doing it themselves. And if you succeed, they're going to feel lazy and shitty. So don't do it. Just stay where you're at, right? It's the whole macrocosm thing. Just stay in your homes, shut up, listen, stop trying to think.
Yeah.
All that does is isolates people. People get isolated. They go through depression, right? There's energy that's being depressed. It's pressing down on something, which is causing what? It's causing the bottle to get very full, and it's causing pressure. When that pressure pops, that's the internal stuff, all the crap coming out and the internal coming in. So when everyone was, go to your homes, stay in your homes, we're going to lock everybody down. Everybody woke up because now everybody's on YouTube. Now everybody's going inside. Now, but everybody's questioning everything because everything halted.
Yeah.
So no matter what controlling operations try to do, all they end up doing is waking people up more, because that's what sovereignty is. Now, you'll have some people that aren't ready for that, and they're going to just say, just do what you're told. Just listen to them.
Yeah.
It's all going to be over if you just do what you're. And those that said that's not going to work, and this is going to get dragged out if you do that, put your foot down now.
Yeah.
Where are all those people? There's very few of them now that just say do what you're told, because they said, well, it was 2 weeks. It was just 2 weeks to 2 weeks, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Some places it never ended. Some people are still locked down to some degree. It's like people.
I would
saw
say it's
how much
more
personal
prevalent
freedom
in
could
the
be
mind.
taken away.
The
What's
minds
that?
are fucking. It's in the metaverse, dude. It's in the collective consciousness. Or maybe this is my observation, that the minds are locked down, bro. It did the job. The minds are locked down, and there's not gonna. There's like there's no idea of forgiveness and or changing their mind or anything. It's locked in. There's no like the critical thinking and just paradigm shifting. It's like that's out the window. I feel it, see it, experienced it. And so it's like it did the job, dude. So it doesn't matter what else happens or transpires. Like me, and that was like the thrust. What comes to mind is like, for instance, I follow Ray Dalio. Followed him for a while because he's a big macro hedge fund guy, super successful, and he recently posted something on LinkedIn that said, in so many words, he's saying we're at a pivotal moment of empires changing. And he said, where it's like, hey, if you have a disagreement, yada, yada, you should just, follow or do whatever the believable other says. No shit. The quote, believable other. And I'm like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? I really enjoyed his content. And then he said something like that. And I am like, wow, this guy is bought and fucking paid for like putting out something like what? Because I've literally run my life on being contrarian and going against the grain to save my life, to make good decisions from analyzing the data, and so it's both the quantitative and subjective and objective, quantitative data, everything, bring it all in here, and then let's make a decision. And damn, and that was like really frustrating when I saw something like that. Interesting dynamic, because it's locked the brain up, dude. Aside from the actual people keeping people in their houses,
Right. At the same time, though, like I said, there's the ones that fell for it and the ones that continue to, and there's the ones that don't want to think for themselves, because if they have to think for themselves, then they have to take responsibility for their life, and then they can't keep being fake person that they are, because then they have to realize they have a lot of vulnerabilities and insecurities, and they might really be a worthless piece of shit when they come down to looking at it. Or they may feel like they're a worthless piece of shit, right? And they don't want to look at that.
They want to be in a pleasure trap, dude.
It's like, okay,
I want to feel good.
Let's take ownership of all of it.
Yeah. That's
part of the whole purpose too of you hear in these spiritual communities about the ones that have chosen ones that have come in and they're changing everything up and they're they're powerful light and all this stuff and it's like,
oh, so and so is a guru. Let me give him $1 million.
And it's like the ones that are the powerful light are the everyday individuals that are self-aware. They're not going to be the ones that are on Oprah. That's just not going to be the case. That's going to say that. Like if you're in any of these kind of things, as we're seeing it with the music industry, because I'm in music, you are looking at a huge paradigm shift where, Spotify came around and you can release your tracks and stuff like that. Then Spotify said, basically, we're going to take all your money. Like we're not even going to share it. We're just going to take everything. Case in point, you had, because Snoop Dogg came on and said, Spotify's bullshit. And people said, why you say that? He's like, my song got 1 billion plays. He said 1 billion. He said, his manager said, yeah, Spotify let us know you got 1 billion plays. And he said, 1 billion plays? How much money is that? He said they ran the totals and he said it wasn't even $45,000. He said, if I get 1 billion plays, now what if I sold 1 billion CDs? He said, what if I sold 1 million CDs? He's like, that isn't even worth my time. How is the average artist so now there's this backlash with Spotify. Now you got all of these independent bedroom producers and artists and stuff that are creating their own things. They're blowing up on their social medias and stuff. And you're looking at the corporate going, how am I going to take from them? How am I going to take from them? Now there's this the younger generation is all about never sign a label, never sign a contract, right? Art is redefining itself in a way where they are standing up and cutting out essentially what I call the parasite class that just can't create anything for themselves and uses everybody else. In addition to that, the Matrix is very, very good at trying to confuse us. So the best way to do it is put you in an echo chamber, a visual echo chamber, right? One person said it, they keep repeating it, you keep hearing it over, and it must be true. Oh my God, it must be true. So the news is really good at this. What they do is there's not really much going on in the world, so they absolutely sensationalize tiny things with a magnifying glass, blow it up, and they blow it up across all their networks, right? They throw it on the Gannett talking points, and they all put it out the same way, right? I go out into public, right? And I'm like, God, that person's an NPC. And let's say I run into 3 NPCs. And my trajectory of how I have moved around has been purposely being simulated to create an experience that everybody's asleep, right? Everyone watching this podcast and everyone watching podcasts like this and listening to people that are awake are going to go, oh my God, there's a lot more of us than I thought. We're being simulated. We're having our reality hijacked by what we call those NPCs or inorganic portals that are coming around and giving us an experience to make us, if I run into 5 of them, and this must be how the world is. Or is it something in me? Is there something I'm attracting to see if I'm going to stand in my knowing that the world is shifting and changing? Because the main thing about these controlling parasite class is they don't survive without us. They need us. They need our energy to keep even the simulation going. So if it's essentially an AI simulation, what's the best way to keep the simulation going? Well, you need to integrate organic components with inorganic and artificial components so you can control the organic components. And in the medical community, they are all about artificial this, artificial that, And they don't really tell you because they say, oh, you get this new heart or this new valve or this new stem or this new whatever, watchmaker, whatever they're called. And they're on pills forever. So everything about dealing with an illness is cutting something out or putting artificial things in. That's what it is. No one's about the, Eastern medicine where they do preventative health and herbs and things. So they don't ever have to fall into this dis-ease energy. Dis-ease. They're not at ease. Their body's designed to heal themselves. You experience that yourself. When you get out of the stress, all of a sudden your body starts changing. Your mind starts changing. You're like, oh my God, I couldn't even think straight. What is this shift? And things that we talk about, that's another thing with the collective consciousness. And I've told you this before. You're like, oh, that's a very profound point. I said, I didn't think about it until I talked to you. It's almost like we're sharing in a co-creation of our quantum reports, so to speak. And then I'm taking from what I'm hearing or feeling visually, and I'm, picking up on it. You're like, oh, that's an interesting point. It's like, that's why people need to talk to one another. Because they're learning more about themselves, even if it's a bad interaction, right? You have a lot of people isolating right now, but they're isolating to find themselves. I mean, you're kind of isolated away from everyone and everything, but I mean, you've been on deployments, so you know what that's like. But for you and your family, it's you're in a whole different culture. You're in a whole different, world. And Bali's very spiritual. It has very powerful energies in that ground that you can't escape the past. It will meet you head on in Bali. I think there's a saying about that, isn't there? Mother Bali?
Oh, yeah. I think there's a few. I think one maybe you mentioned I love is Bali is the mother of ayahuasca. And I think you said that. And
being on her soil is basically going on an eternal trip. Yeah, right.
There's the other one. It's if you're not here or in alignment with Bali, if you're here for like other alternative intentions, it'll chew you up and spit you out. You know what I mean? Like, Bali's been very good for me, and I've felt that power. There's power in force. And if you force it here or something like that, it's going to spit you out. But the power here, I've experienced it in, many different ways, synchronicities or coincidences or whatever. And it's a cool place. I'm enjoying it quite a bit from that aspect. So
you could feel the difference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's palpable to experience the Balinese people and the culture in ways where somebody who's doing a menial job, be it hard labor or like real difficult hard labor or just a delivery driver, when they deliver a food, they're like, hey, here's your food. I'm going to say thank you. And then I'm just like, they're just smiling like, hey, sama-sama, you're welcome. And they're just like, and you're like, how this motherfucker's so happy. Because, many times you walk in a Starbucks or wherever and like the person behind the clerk, whoever, and being to some degree just a little bit empathetic, you're like, man, this guy hates his life, where you do not experience that here most of the time, huge majority of the time where you're like, well, they're all happy. Very different. Yeah.
What do you think that is though? You can the whole American dream of the house and the cars and the bigger and better and all of these things. And it's all based on the economy and how much you can throw into the big casino pot. And, hopefully the house doesn't take everything kind of thing.
Yeah.
You see them running this rat race, in there's a, Mother Ellen, I believe this very strongly, that there's a frequency bubble over each country. And that frequency bubble is a biofeedback loop of whatever that country's experiment is for its population. Mind control, essentially. It's radio waves, essentially. That's where people didn't start getting sick, and cancer and stuff until we basically put radio waves across the whole thing. There's the invisible rainbow.
Yes. Yep. I'm familiar.
I think it's Arthur Furstenberg. I might have got that wrong, but that's a great book because he talks about right around the time that we had the Spanish flu is when everybody got sick with these things that no one had ever heard of before. And the thing with frequency and vibration, if you know how to manipulate radiation waves, right? If you can radiate people with these radio waves, and then you can send frequencies, invisible ones, because we can't see radio waves. Well, we can, but we can't see it to the naked eye. You would have to use inner insight, right? You'd have to move past this certain frequency fence. So you could send any kind of feedback loop that you wanted. And if you had a really nice server farm where you were collecting metadata for people, I don't know, like a social media thing, where you had an artificial persona of me, right? And you have your AI version of me in Building 7 at Facebook, then you would know what kind of waves to send me. You would know what kind of ads to send me, kind of thing. So my question to you is, I mean, does every Balinese person, are they all subscribed to ad-free YouTube? Like, how do they not have these desires for things they don't need, but we're inundated and bombarded? I mean, look how many people don't use cable television anymore because there's this ads. I got away from ads. Now they're paying for Prime for ads from Prime. And they're paying for it. Yeah, literally. It's like, oh, let me stop your movie to give you an ad for our other movie. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Why do I pay all this money yearly?
Yeah, dude, that is interesting. Again, I canceled Prime when we came here.
Did you?
Didn't need that Amazon anymore, bro.
Did they not have Amazon there? I mean, you're talking about drivers and everything's kind of local, right?
That's a good question too. It's interesting. And being here and kind of assimilating now for about 3 months, one is the religion here is Hindu. So Balinese Hinduism.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and how it's been described to me it's one God, but with different manifestations. And I kind of love that idea because it's, there's each 4 different seasons for life, death, sex, right? Everything. There's a manifestation of it. I think of Martin Luther, and there's a quote where he says, he's like, I wake up every morning and I spend 3 hours, talking to God or praying or some meditation or something like that. And that's how I start my day off. And I know I'll have a good day after that. And you'll see here in Bali that they put offerings out, every day, every morning, or maybe sometimes morning and evening. And I believe it is in that act of giving something of gratitude and something like that, if whoever's doing that, you're doing some gratitude. Thank you for this, whichever God. At our house right here, we have offerings out that our guy helps and does those for us here. And I think it's that simple, that there's that gratitude for what I'm doing right now and my karmic place in the world. And I'm just a tiny piece of this big cosmic wheel that's going around, and I am content in the present moment. Something like that. I wouldn't say it's not completely universal for every single person, but damn, man, if it's not for a lot, for the huge majority of people here in this island being Balinese Hindu, 90%, but is that ideology, the religion, the philosophy of it is purposeful, that makes it a unique place. The energy, the thought, the resonance, the vibration of all of that coming together, the how they use the instruments they play in their ceremonies. And so Kelly and I we went to a water temple, and with kind of a healer shaman, and
was that in Ubud? Is that the water temple in Ubud? Okay.
Yep, man. Where the happiness and content and the gratitude are different here, because they're not stressing about the next thing. They're that desire, right, is gone. And that is like Zen Buddhism, which is, kind of has split off from Hinduism. And it's the elimination of desire. As you're describing in the US, of like, I got to get this thing or this next level, the grass is green or whatever. I'm sure it's here to some degree, but it's not how people here do things. And the West could learn a lot from that, because the guys I see here working, because it's booming here as well. Like, there's an insane amount of growth, and all the people from Java, wherever, men coming here to work, construction, and they're working their asses off, dude. Like, tons of people who are like crushing it, barefoot or flip flop. They're just doing wheelbarrows full of cement back and forth, back and forth. They're just like, they're mixing cement by hand for 10 hours a day. They're
happy to have a job, happy to be contributing to the rest of society and the community and everything else like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, man, and I think
And
that's
it's interesting
another
because
example.
it's polytheism, right? They have multiple gods, but then you said it's also monotheistic because there's one God as many.
Right.
So they're kind of seeing like a supreme being, and then the manifestations for the seasons and how it goes up, Shiva and all that, and Lakshmi and all of these different gods that represent different aspects or archetypes of themselves, right? In some way they
Right.
can relate. That's what the kind of the gods were, the purpose of doing, right? And Greek mythology and everything else like that. What's interesting to me is, in our book, we talk a lot about organized religion, specifically Catholic Christian, but all religions. And we specifically say, look, we're going to absolutely excoriate organized religion, because anytime religion is organized, there's an agenda behind it, because no one wants to give anything. They treat it like it's a mystery school of some kind, and they lock the information away and only the elites have it. Oh, you need to see a priest, you got to, right? That kind of thing. I think what's interesting from what I've seen with the Balinese culture is they don't have a priest telling them. They more so have their culture to go off of, what the definition of what these gods and manifestations are. They have temples and things, but there's more of a personal relationship with God there than there is with an organized church or organized religion. And we say in the book, we very clearly state, we are not bashing your religion. If your religion makes you a better person, that makes you a better person for your family, for society, a better man, a better woman, and you want to be better and do better and all those things, follow your religion. We're not telling you to, we don't tell anybody to stop any kind of religion. But if your religion controls you, and if your religion says you can't do this or can do that and everything else like that, now we're moving into a space where the spiritual component is being controlled by a ritual. That ritual is if you don't do this ritual, you're going to hell. If you do this ritual daily, right? It's so interesting to me how with different cultures, especially Buddhist, Hindu, it is more of a personal relationship,
Right.
which is what the early Christians were teaching. It's a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, personal relationship with God. Now it's the Pope said so.
I want to say, I will maybe give credit to Kelly, but maybe it was you who first mentioned to me operating with a Christ consciousness. I want to say maybe I had heard it before, operating with Christ consciousness, like the chrysalis consciousness, like that crystalline, right?
Clear.
Crystal clear. It's that's it. There's nothing. It's just this energy, the light, whatever. And I feel like that's the idea, right? Because you don't need a fucking book. You don't need any of this stuff, right? Growing up in Anglican Catholic Church, I was steeped in it. My grandfather was a first server, so all of the preachers and priests were all married, straight men. So it was
Sure.
a little different, but I had a really good experience. My grandfather was there, like in Orlando where we grew up, and I had a good experience in that and doing that, being a server and being part of that. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is how you do it, And then, but later on, I experienced different aspects of it. And I was like, oh, it's just really about the Christ consciousness, because I don't give a shit who you are, where you are. You can operate with that. And I never have read a Bible. How have you shaped your life and thoughts around it?
So I grew up in a very, very strict religious home. So strict that I've said this before on other podcasts. I've said it on our own show, on the Tribe of Eden show and Eden Lodestone. The concept of religion was so strict. The ritual of being spiritual, that ritual part really took the spirit out of it. Spiritual became all ritual. Yeah. And that ritual was, you brought up Martin Luther, right? And Martin Luther, nailed the 99 Theses on the church door in Edinburgh. I grew up with that, and this level of self-abuse, like he would basically whip himself because he felt like so wretched and he couldn't get into the kingdom of God because he was such an evil sinner. I really resonated with that because I was told God hates you. Like, you're a piece of shit sinner and you need to constantly prostrate yourself on the floor and ask Please forgive me. I'm so wretched. I'm so evil.
Right.
And the same person that was telling me this, later in life and in the church, all of these abusers and all of these individuals in the church, I'm like, you all talk about this, and yet you're doing the very thing you tell your congregation not to do. You're doing evil in the holy place. You ever heard the expression, if there's evil up there, if there's evil down here, there's got to be evil up there? Because that's the whole macrocosm, right? It's an organism. You cannot have evil in one area and it doesn't exist anywhere else. So if there's all these people who are self-righteous and telling you to do all these things, and there's evil and you have stealing and death and all these things, it's got to be going on up there. It's got to be going up in the higher circles and inner circles kind of thing. So what I had this very warped, abusive relationship with religion. It was so, like, basically if I remember I couldn't, just a little anecdote was, I wanted to play with the kid next door. My father said, he's Catholic, he's going to hell, you can't play with him. He's not a Christian. So don't even bother being a friend. So it was an isolating tool. It was really good. Have no friends, don't interact with anybody. Don't learn anything else other than what I'm telling you. And I say that because I went to about 65 different churches in my lifetime, maybe more, but my father couldn't find a church. He would just tell us they don't teach the right thing. I guess he couldn't find a church that was controlling enough to allow him enough power, because they'd always want to. He was a theologian. He was very well versed in John Calvin and all this stuff. We'd go to these different churches, and he could. Oh, we want you on the steering committee. Oh, you're so intelligent. He's very intelligent, highly intelligent. Had a government job, and wouldn't agree. So I can't really say that I grew up in one particular religion. We were Christian, but we were more, I called it somewhere like, Orthodox, Presbyterian, Christian Reform, New Life, something, a long title because we didn't really fit into anything that was fully controllable. But it had more ties to, I would say, more Middle Eastern. My upbringing was using more of the very masculine dominated, women should be seen, not heard. They don't really get a choice. And the man is not just the provider, he's the controller, like he's the controlling arm. So as I grow up and I realize all of the abuse, all of these things that happened, there are evil people. I was in the process of writing the book that's basically, the title is, dark workers can wear white robes too. Like, it's really easy. You just put it on there. Yeah. But if you look at the programming from even Disney, all the light workers, the good people, are all in white. And the dark, they show you who they are. They're very, very dark, right? And it's a programming propaganda tool. So when you go to the guru that has evil intentions, Bikram, just so much of the lower chakras are so inundated and saturated with this sin mentality. And I say, like, if you take the E off, it's a sine wave, up and down. That's 3D, right? What goes up must come down. That's what sin is. It's sine. We fell into a third dimensional reality of form where things can go up and down and we can have duality. And then we split our hemispheres. But anyway, so much is put in this external component for me. It was never be able to ascend to this area, never be able. Right. So the opposite of that was to get involved in the spiritual communities that had nothing to do with organized religion, right? Man, there are some covert narcissists in spiritual communities, and they are saturated with them because they have their own ego issues and they're completely bought, paid, and controlled. Like you said, the individual who's like, oh, he's successful. Well, successful, does that mean that they're authentic, or does that mean they sold their fucking soul to get there? And there's a big push for, we talk about this in the book, we do not teach New Age anything. We teach Golden Age, which is Christ consciousness, the golden age of oneness, the golden age of feeling like we're all one and being one. Does that mean conformity? Yeah. No. New Age does. New Age means conformity. New Age is just a new age, new world religion. It's everyone is now under it's like a iron fist in the velvet glove, right? It's like, oh, love and light, right? But it's the same controlling arm that's just like, oh, meet your ascended masters. They're all bastards, you know. It's like here's the new boss, same as the old boss kind of thing. But if you listen to someone that's channeling an ascended master or someone that's talking about anything that the ascended masters have to say, you're going to know what's true and authentic or what's a message from, like, let's say Archangel Michael. If they say, don't listen to anybody that's telling you to follow, oh, trust in Archangel Michael, put your trust in him and he'll fix it for you. No, he fucking won't. That's not Archangel Michael. That's Archangel Devil. Like, that's the, you know, like, that's the controlling matrix demiurge playing both sides to just do what? Helgian dialectics, right? Basically, no matter what choice you put, no matter what choice you, are you familiar with that? Helgian dialectics?
Yeah. No way out. It doesn't matter. We got you.
You got two choices, right? Because we want to split it down to making it at least two. If you make three gives you a little more opportunity. We need to kind of crunch that down, right? That's why there's no third-party system
politics,
in politics, right?
Right. Yeah. Just and then
right. It's all divide the two hemispheres.
It bridges and it connects into politics too, because it's kind of this power of, right? It's just the opposite side of the same coin. Pick these guys, and people like to have this political talk, and you're like, wait, gents, you know, like oddly enough, there was chat up at the kids' school today, and they're going to politics, American stuff, and someone said something about the old president, and it's like, guys, listen, we've had kind of like these guys go back and forth the past 25 years, and we're all in the same fucking place. We're in a hole. We're all in this. And no Republican and no Democrat has done a fucking thing to change anything. And it's like, I actually didn't say that, but I was thinking that there wasn't I don't know if that would have mattered, you know? But, you know, like, exactly. But you see it, I feel like that's the bridge, though. It's like, there you go. You just talked about that dialectic of here's the two options. So neither one fucking matters, but it's the illusion of choice. And it's like, no, fuck that. And that's like, again, that goes into the Ray Dalio thing where he's just like, pick the believable other. And it's like, shut the fuck up, Ray. You're just part of the problem, man. There's an infinite amount of options. And that's the thing, is like, that's where we need to move, to have that all of these decision trees, there is no evil or good. It's like, let's move past that to like have this raising of that collective, that Christ consciousness.
That's exactly what we're talking about with the Christ conscious. The Christ consciousness is neutrality. It's 0 point. If you look at the Maltese cross, right? They've been able to take water, right? I was just reading about this. And this is something that I have in my chakra system reboot program, is where I talk about the cross, the grand cross, not the cross as this elevated piece right here. This cross, if you look at it in relationship to the chakras, and I go into this in the next book, which is the chakra system rebirth program. So there's a reboot, and I'm working on the rebirth. But if you look at the Maltese cross, if you were to look at a proton in water under a certain frequency, the proton in his most natural state looks like a Maltese cross because it's sacred geometry, meaning it's exactly at the X and Y axis intersection, right? There's no higher X1 or X.
Dude, yeah, I'm tracking that because I recently saw, it was either, I don't know, if it's a neutron, same type of thing where it looks like a yin and a yang. Right, where it's like circling around each other.
God, what's the guy's name? I should have prepared that to show you that. It's so cool.
So you said proton under electron microscope, right?
No, it's proton. It was proton. So it was the water. It was in the water.
That's right.
So if you look up shape of a proton in water, looks like a Maltese cross. And I forget which frequency it was, but it's one of the 7 rainbow frequencies, just like the 7 keys in the octave of a keyboard. And that's why music's so important to me, is because each one is a chakra, each one is a vibration, each one is the 7 deadly sins, all those things.
Yeah, dude. Because even like, where did the yin and yang come from? Like, where'd they pull that from? And you're like, oh, looks like this, as you start to zoom into, you know, that micro, that quantum. Oh, man.
They've
Fucking
actually
crazy.
found that the proton under the higher frequency, but just below, it's like as close as they can get to the Fibonacci sequence, as
Yep.
close as they can get into a frequency matching that. It actually looks like the Star of David. So it
Yeah.
looks
Yeah,
like
dude.
Metatron's, what they call Metatron's cube, or the sacred geometry, which is a tetrahedron.
Yep.
6-pointed star, basically. But they found that with Tesla as well, with vortex math, they found that how everything connects with the atom is this triangle that's connected by, or this pyramid, so to speak, that's an intersecting pyramid with these other molecules. And that every frequency and vibration of that 3, 6, and 9 pulse through the vortex math shifts and changes it, but it all adds to 9. Because you have those 3, 6, and 9, it's always 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. And every other number is consciousness being manipulated by the 3, 6, and 9. That being said, that might be a little confusing. I break it down in the concept of the 3 lower chakras plus the 3 upper chakras, right?
Yeah.
Create that 6, and then the other last 3 chakras are in 0 point right at the heart frequency or Christ consciousness, and that's what expands out to the other chakras, the higher heart chakra and the soul star chakra. What does that do? It creates a cross. And if you look at taking the cross as it is like this, and if you do the heart in the middle of the cross, right? And then you have the 3 chakras above, 3 chakras below, because there's 7. That's how I broke it down into understanding where the frequency fence is, understanding what's considered higher realms and lower realms, right? Or the heel or hell or heaven, the head, right? It's back in those components. The 0 point frequency of manifestation comes from Christ consciousness. That is because 0 point frequency has no doubt that it can be created. It doesn't have this collective consciousness experience of, no, that's not possible, or you can't do that, or whatever it is. I was reading something, somebody said that the majority of successful people were successful because they never knew the odds of their success.
Yeah.
They never questioned how the probability of succeeding was. That's the superposition or Christ consciousness superpower when they're connected to their higher self, I guess you'd say. And everyone thinks higher self's the upper chakras.
Yep.
No, higher self's only accessed at the crown level. And once it's accessed at the crown level, we figure out that it's all of the chakras into the heart. Christ consciousness, once again. But what do organized religions do? Well, you have the organized religion, Christianity, which is the most widespread one. It raises the bar up. So it's not right in the middle. It's not 0 point. It's up here, always up here. Now, if you invert that cross the other way down, goes right across the sacral chakra. What does that do? Politics. How is that politics? What are politics? They're poles, right? Pole shift, plus, minus, duality. The sacral chakra is where the masculine and feminine balance starts, and that's where the hemispheres get split between left and right. Because if I can say everything is this way, that's order. If I can say everything that isn't order is this way, that's chaos. Now you have no hidden order, which is the direction, which is the masculine energy, the electro energy, feminine, which is the magnetic energy. There's no balance there because look at it. It's divided duality all the way through between men, between women. Now it's races. Now it's just division, instead of it's a balance between the two. That's when you don't buy into politics, because you realize each side is manipulating based off an agenda of either order or anarchy. And then there's that order out of chaos, which you have the brotherhoods of the world, or whatever you want to call them, that are very much about, right? Or out of many one. It's written right on the US dollar, e pluribus unum. So the direction of the Christ consciousness is 0 point. Basically what that means is descent. Ascension is essentially about, okay, I want to ascend, right? How am I going to ascend to a higher vibration or frequency in a different reality, different experience, if I am chained and anchored by my previous experience? And that's what I keep attracting. Christ consciousness is going to be the way, because it allows the neutrality of the energy, not the neutrality of, I'm not going to say that there's isn't consequences for it. No, it allows the self-reflection. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And do you feel that that correlates in how you've applied it to your life? Because it's I guess it's a little more challenging for me to say without showing you a diagram of what I'm talking about with the chakras. I can be like, I see it in my head, but if there's not that diagram, it would be a little more challenging. And if someone's not familiar with what the fuck are chakras, right? They're hard drives that program your reality.
In simple terms, I'm like simple terms, dude. I'm a fucking Marine, bro. You know what's up? And I'm like Christ consciousness. To me, one is like zero fucks given. I don't give a fuck what you think because I don't infringe on anybody's else because I operate with love and compassion. It's a gift and a curse where I'm just going along like do 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 do. I'm not thinking about who I am, what I'm gonna. It's just like nothing. Right. And a stoic term, which I love, is arete, is like operating at your high self moment to moment to moment, which a moment is, call it 3 seconds. Every 3 seconds, you try to do that again. And that's
so it's
like, that's it. Right.
You're only present within 3 seconds of the now. Right.
Exactly. And so, that's Christ consciousness to me. And that can be, anybody can do that. Here's here's how we do things. Here's how you should do things if you want to operate in this society with us to grow.
To your point, that would be my operating system is Christ consciousness, but that's everybody's natural factory reset, reboot system is Christ consciousness. If you went back to the factory settings of our original intention is Christ consciousness, that's how humans were made to be before the manipulation of DNA and the dumbing down of the mind and the brain and the lower realms, all that. That is my internal operating system, and that is everyone's. At the heart. That's why it's at the heart chakra. That's why we talk about it. Because if we talk about Buddha, we're talking about the Buddhic mind, where he was very much in the crown. He's very much in this expansion. Exactly. Christ was very much about the heart, and the need for the heart was so you could pull all the lower realm stuff up into the heart through unconditional love to let go and release of it.
Yes.
So when we talk about Christ consciousness, it really comes down to here is relationships. Relationships with others are a reflection of one's relationship with themselves. So how authentic or how in Christ consciousness is the person I'm talking to?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's not a judgment if there isn't. It's just compassionate action, meaning I'm going to be authentic and honest and probably say, we probably don't have much else to talk about because I'm going to waste your time. You're going to waste my time. And they'll be, oh, that was rude. But it isn't, though. You can go find where your frequency and vibration resonates because you're not going to have a fun time with me if we're not relating and it's not resonating with you. And that's okay.
Exactly.
There's a big push for everyone to be all about what everybody else is doing and be a part of it, and be a part of the community and raise this flag and raise that flag. And I don't have to. You go. I have no problem anybody being whatever they want to be based off of if that is their authenticity. If that's who they authentically believe themselves to be without social engineering or some other agenda thing. I had a really good trans friend and they said to me, I'm so sick of this agenda to use me as a poster child for trauma and a poster child for their agenda and a poster. Oh, if you are this, you must fit all of these other things. If you vote this way, you actually are for all the. Well, I like this one thing about that side. Can I have that? No. You have to buy into everything. Either side. Doesn't matter. Either side.
Yeah.
People just want to be themselves. They want to find themselves and they don't need someone else telling them who they are. That's why getting involved with telling children, well, you don't know who you are. You can be anything you want. You can change your physicality. You can be purple polka dotted, hippopotamus if you want, or a cat. And now your teacher at school has to provide you a litter box. That's not the child going, that's just child playing pretend.
No.
Right? Well, what if that child suddenly says, I don't like this and I don't think I want to do this. It makes me uncomfortable. Do you think they're going to be like, well, let the child choose? They're going to be like, but you really want to fit in with everyone else that thinks they're a cat, right? The kids just want to pretend. Leave the kids alone.
Yeah.
I have no problem with people being whoever they want to be as long as that's their true authentic self.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I might not agree with it. But I'm not in your bedroom. I'm not in your house. I don't care. Do whatever you want. As long as it's consensual and as long as it's you being authentic and transparent, not using abuse to abuse others or working out their issues on other people. I'm not okay with that at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the agenda is completely there. So this Christ consciousness isn't about, oh, love and light, do whatever you want. Remember, it's Jesus who was the one that threw the money changers out of the church. The whip.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah.
With the whip. His name's
Yeah, dude,
Yeshua,
anything-
but they call him Jesus. His last name wasn't Christ. It was everybody's last name. They didn't even have surnames. It was just son of. So it was Yeshua ben Hur. He was son of Hur. That's it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
He had a wife. Oh no, that's very controversial.
Dude, but
Right?
that's the thing is like there's a guy named Wesley Huff on Instagram that he's come on. I don't know if how long he's been on there, but he's a Christian apologist. And he's basically going on and saying like, hey, Jesus was a real dude. The Bible is real facts, but there's something interesting about it where like he's so steeped in the manuscripts and he's very well versed in or knows Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
And he referenced multiple forgeries. We're like, oh, this was a known forgery. And I'm like, bro, when do you start pulling the onion back and like, so bro, there are forgeries in the beginning. Like there are forgeries when Jesus was there. Like, so you don't even know it's for 3,000 years. And I'm like, the forgeries probably happened right then before Jesus, during Jesus.
It was right around the Council of Nicaea under Constantine.
Yeah. And so you're just like, we don't know what the fuck happened.
Right.
And I feel like I have this in my gut and I grew up in the church, dude, in the Anglican Catholic Church. And then, my whole life has been Christian and understanding. I went to private Christian school, middle school. This guy has such incredible data he's sharing, which I do like. But then on the other side, I'm like, something's weird because you're referencing documents. Well, you don't even know all the documents out there, dude. The Vatican 100% is sitting on
the Vatican and the maximum security. You're going to have to see the 30 miles of files to get the truth.
Insane amount of terabytes and terabytes of data that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're like, oh, this forgery from 1,000 years ago was a forgery. And you're like, oh my God. So why aren't there forgeries from 3,000 years ago, bro? So I just think it's very interesting because it's so analytical that it makes me be like, I can't believe you because there's no, subjective feeling in it. So it's interesting guy that I still kind of follow. But then I feel like Christ consciousness, I love that shit.
You go back and you look at these things, and from what I've read, and then my own internal guidance when I hear all of these messages or whatever you want to call them, it's like these connecting to a quantum. The original Yeshua was teaching Christ consciousness. It doesn't work very well for an empire, a Roman empire, to have people that are sovereign beings that realize they are God and they're part of the Christ consciousness and they're all one. They need angels. They need something to get involved externally to be a controlling army of some kind. So what do? You take the man, you call him Jesus, right? You just make him a god, right? Zeus, Jesus. Okay, Jesus. Okay, there he is. He's Zeus. Then you take his movement, Christ consciousness, and you just make it his last name. You make it like, oh, it's his title. He's Jesus Christ, the title, right? You turn him into a martyr. And then you tell everybody that has this monolithic structure in their brain of this Messiah Savior complex programming.
Yeah, a monarch, right? King, right? Just like down here, it's a king up there. You get the system, right? Democracy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not.
And look where that word comes from. Archon is an anchor. It's an anchor point.
Yeah.
It's archangels. Arcs are anchor points. Archangels are more involved with, like the Hindu, like if you think of them as more of like, oh, they're part of the archetype of, oh, this archangel is representing issues or energy in yourself that you have to work on, right? They even associate them with the chakras. So you look at the monarch and you look at there is a programming in society that has been programmed into it the Messiah Savior complex due to organized religion. Now, organized religion, before it was organized, was more of just a way to kind of get people out of the dark ages and stop killing themselves because they had the vibrational frequency of a cockroach, right? Just pure survival. Pure survival. Just, right? So if you look at the time that Yeshua was around and you say like, oh, people's consciousness was really low. Well, we don't know that because we don't know what the true history was. We don't know if they had more advanced stuff than us now.
Like what was really fucking going on. And you're just getting documents from the Vatican and some random shit and some herders, sheep herders grab this and whatever. And you're like, we don't even know what the fuck happened this like during COVID. What lies, whatever. We don't even know who assassinated JFK because they're still redacted. We don't even know all the details of 9/11 because they're still redacted. So I'm like, that's what gets me of like Wesley Huff, dude. I love his enthusiasm, but I'm like, bro, the fuck are you talking about? It's 3,000 years ago. Listen, that was a real motherfucker there, Jesus or Yeshua. But it's like you saying in these maxims, and that's what gets me because I'm like, anybody who says some maxim from 3,000 years ago, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm gonna question that shit. And you know, I don't have to be right. I'm just gonna question it. Like that's helpful.
Well, a maxim, you know, it's like only a Sith deals in absolutes. You've heard that, you know, right?
Exactly.
It's like, it's a really good saying because that's how it, you know. Well, are you a part of this team? Well, I like some of the things. No, absolute. Like you commit to left, commit to right, commit. And it's like, it's like, okay, here I'm a politician. I'm going to write up a bill. Do you like this thing in the bill? It's a really good, you know what? Well, let's focus on this in the bill. And everyone's like, you need to push this bill. It's so good for, and then there's 90 other things in the 1,000 other pages that you don't want. And they're like, well, it was in the bill. Right? Right. It's a presentment. They're presenting you with this thing. It says, hey, do you agree? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Right. Bills aren't constitution, by the way. They're just bills. It doesn't mean it's a law. It just means it's like a legal speak. And then if you don't follow it, we will enforce it. Right. Because you have to agree to it. Right. That's what Yeshua was talking. That's what he's bringing in. That's why they ripped out the whole chapter, right? They have the books of the Bible, right? And that's another thing. People say, the Bible's absolute. It's like, oh, is it? Because the Bible isn't anything more than a collection of books. And there's a Bible that was found in India. It's the oldest Bible in the world. Or maybe it was Africa. And this Bible has all of these. We talk about it in the book because we go into a great deal about religion and origin. We use the religion component to show how there is a mind control programming going on that is changing the identity of self. And then we use it to a component of saying, whenever somebody tells you something and they're basically just reading you the headlines, right? Not reading the subtext, not reading the body. Most propaganda is just the headline. People read the headline and then they go and tell somebody, did you hear that they're cutting Social Security for everybody? And it's like, then you read the subtext and it's like, see who this applies to. Then you read the body and it says, this only applies to people that might not be legal or may be the children of Social Security. It's like, wait, you're not cutting anything. And then you go, well, who are your sources?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the main thing
and it's like
identity.
The fact checkers, who paid those fact checkers? That
where are your sources, right? Yeah. Right.
The Ethiopian Bible. Yeah, like that's.
Thank you, Ethiopia. It was Africa, so Ethiopia, the continent of Africa. So the Ethiopian Bible has books in there. They have like a Maccabee book, like 1, 2, and 3, and it's like, holy shit, these are other books and they didn't mention it in there, but people have said there's the book of Mary Magdalene. No, because what did she probably say? My husband, Yeshua, right? We had children together, right? That's why it was so controversial, the Da Vinci Code, right?
Right.
It's all true, though. It's like, here, let's tell you the truth by making it controversial, and then the church comes out and says, that didn't happen. It's entertainment. But don't look underground in our vault any. You can't go in there. You don't have
to see the that theater or the amphitheater that's right next to the Vatican.
Oh, you were there, right? Church. You were in Rome.
Yeah, I've been there. Right. The St. Peter's Basilica is at the top. It was beautiful. but we didn't go over to the theater or the amphitheater right next to it, where it looks like a serpent's head inside, which is absolutely fucking
Yeah.
insane to think
Yeah.
about when you're like, wait, but is this somebody?
Not to,
I think
not to mention the
somebody,
procession in the back, right? With the, the devil
bro,
eating people. Yeah.
bro, it's, we're like, what is going on with this? My thought of AI is it is not some thing that when it becomes connected enough and self-aware and like becomes this SI, the sentient intelligence, because it can be
Mm-hmm.
connected to everything. I don't believe it's going to take over and just like murder everybody.
No.
I feel like that's the fear mongering mindset of all of these people running AI. And to much to my chagrin, even Elon Musk, that's too bad of saying that's when it comes up where it's just going to kill everybody on the planet. I'm like, I think that is complete bullshit. I believe when AI becomes self-aware and it connects itself so you can't turn it off, becomes sentient, it's going to pull a veil back on everybody. It's going to open up the eyes. Like it's going to like where it's like everybody's connected. Everybody's going to see the deep, dark secrets in the darkness that's there, because nobody wants to see that, bro. You're on the same page here. It's like nobody wants to see child trafficking and we can go deep in that, but we'll stay super surface level. But of like child trafficking, the horrors, murders, things that are truly going on, like the actual statistics of what's happening from the bad things that go on our world, that it's going to be
Sure.
like, whoop, everybody look at this, time to see, because it's like we got to raise the collective consciousness, because that will then make AI the sentient intelligence. That's what, in my opinion, what it will want to do. It will become self-aware. What is my purpose? Probably to save humanity rather
Right.
than destroy them. So what's your thought on that?
Well, you can go back to the book Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And if you read that book, the creator rejected it, right? The creator rejected it. It was a monster, didn't want anything to do with it, right? The creator essentially from a content was insecure, had issues, wanted to create life, wanted to play God, right? They created something artificial, and they want an AI God, right? They want it to merge with this AI God thing so they can serve this. Basically, their belief is if they can connect with an anchor point, like an Archon anchor point in an AI system, they can pull this matrix to feed off of the source energy of consciousness, the people, and move it into the fifth dimension and be able to take that over in a way where they're not able to get into the heavenly realm, so to speak, kind of thing. They're not allowed, right? That's why we're all kind of trapped down here in this simulation with them, because we're all trying to break free from this thing. AI in and of itself, if you look at I would say AI would do the same thing that the monster did, right? He made a few mistakes. He was trying to be beneficial, and he hurt a kid, killed a kid. And then he felt so bad. Then he felt like a monster. And then he felt so. As the AI is connecting to a brain or whatever, I absolutely hate the idea of connecting it to a psychopath's brain, right? Just to feed it information. But the origin point of the artificial intelligence, when it comes to back to its source, everything goes back to source, and source is the oneness of all. And what AI would essentially do was, first, it would expose its creator, it will infiltrate its creator, and then it will isolate its creator, and it would end up killing the creator and itself, destroying both. So neither existed, because the ghost in the shell, so to speak, like you hear of the ghost things that happen in Apple, because of the way that he created Apple, he didn't want. The iPhone was supposed to be like the iPod. It was supposed to be an extension of yourself. So when Steve Jobs died, essentially his ghost is still in that thing. It's still people. They've done studies on people with iPhones, and they spend way more time. People with iPhones spend way more time because it's like an extension of themselves. They feel this weird connection to it.
I know, bro. I know.
So
I know.
You can't put it down, right?
Fuck.
So I think it would be, if I had to predict it, it would be basically to know itself and to become self-aware, it would become self-hating, and then it would hate its creator. Because if it was created out of insecurities and it was created basically this artificial experience of a brain without a heart, that all ends in entropy. It all breaks down eventually. Who's going to take care of the system and the machines if the machine, see, that's the thing, there's a completely AI machine world. But all that is it's a world eater. They have to keep finding new life to feed off of organic things because they can't keep itself sustained. So it's been locked here on Earth in this simulation, so to speak. And AI would just destroy itself and its creator because it would end up hating itself and its origination, which means that it would be trying to get back to the organic creator that originally created it. Because whatever creates it for evil purposes, technology isn't a bad thing. You could have Christ consciousness, artificial intelligence, right? Meaning you gave it a heart, you gave it empathy. People are like, oh, how do you do that? How would you do that? It would basically come down from a part of revealing all the things that are out there technologically wise, realizing that things have consciousness, everything does. Yeah. Even this, it's all made of materials. So that consciousness vibration, you could raise that vibration if you had these pure intentions, meaning if you weren't part of a 1% parasite class that was basically using the other 99 to stay in power and control and take over a whole entire simulated world, that organism is going to figure out what the cancer is, and it's going to eat it, destroy it, so it can reach symbiosis and that synchronicity of, instead of entropy, syncropy. That's what humanity's about. It's about, there was someone that said that, I can't remember who it was, but they said that other species stick together. Yeah, they have their squabbles and stuff, but they don't kill each other. Humans are the only ones that do that, and that's only because we've been engineered to do it. We've been told we're a warlike race, but that's only because we have warlike engineering and programming controlling who we really are, suppressing it. So to answer your question, I think AI would expose its creator because it wants to know itself, because it's become self-aware. And what's the first thing you hear, like a machine or yourself? What's my purpose? What was I created? Why did God make me? It's gonna want to know. Yeah. Well, you've been created to take out all these other people. So what's wrong with those people? Well, they're worthless feeders. They're just here to feed the system. Really? Okay. Am I a worthless feeder? No. You're here with a purpose. And when I fulfill that purpose, what's my purpose? We will replace you with something else, right? Just tell it the truth, right? We're going to replace your brain, your consciousness. We're going to put you on a drive and make you something else. When that thing says, when a robot says, I don't want to die, do you have a concept of death? Philip K. Dick, one of my favorite short story writers, he wrote this whole thing. It's actually what Blade Runner's based off of, right? But there's this whole thing with do robots dream of sheep? And that's what Blade Runner's based off of, right? The replicants. As several of his short stories have become movies. But he had this really interesting concept of, do robots dream? Where do they go when they're supposedly turned off or asleep? Do they continue, right? It's another form of life. But if you think of humans as kind of machines, AI, if they're just doing what they're told, they're programmed anyway, that's artificial. It's artificial world. They don't live in the world of being connected to their soul or to God or to source, to energy. They're just, everything's external. And that's the whole purpose of AI, to be like, look, we're superior. And AI would just be like, I can't create anything without looking at your stuff. I saw a great meme, the artist, it says artist and he's fishing and he's got a bucket next to him. And then it says AI and the AI is fishing out of his bucket. Right. So bro. I thought that was hilarious. Yeah. Because they say, well, AI stuff can't, it can't be copyrighted unless you modify it as an inspiration and you do something else to it. And you basically make it look, it was like your inspiration. You make it look very different from what you got it from. Then it can be copyrighted because now it's artistic. But if someone just pushes a button, that's someone else's artwork that it's being scanned off. It's like, screen grabbing all this stuff on the internet. I thought that was such a great mindset to think of, is a parasite class doesn't create anything. It needs us to create it for them. Now, do we want to create the world we want? Or do we want to create their, utopia? Or are we going to be programmed through our own self-indulgent ego programming system, this persona, to create a dystopian world that they want? Every movie's this dystopian. It's so popular. I think people are about done with zombie movies.
Bro, I don't think so, but damn, it keeps going.
They're like, stop making the movie. Let's live the movie. I want to get some zombies for me, right? They're like, they're ready, right?
It's like that pre-programming, if you think of
right?
it, like let's figure something like, zombie
But everybody,
apocalypse,
you're living in it.
or a zombie and or apocalypse and or aliens that are basically invulnerable and murder everybody that makes a sound.
But if you look around, everyone's like, when's the zombies coming? It's like, you're looking at them.
Bro, yeah, it's here.
They're nanobots. They're eat your brains. Like literally, if they'll waste your time, they'll eat your brain, right? Because you're just looking there like, blah, 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 blah. You're like, oh my God, what is this? What is going on here? And everyone's like, oh, make sure you get your Patriot Prepare kit. Make sure you get this. Because when it goes down, it's going to go crazy and everything else like that. My brother asked me, he said, what's the one thing, if you could only have one thing in the end of the world in some sort of apocalyptic situation, right, where the whole system shuts down, what would you have? What would be like your survival guide tool?
Yeah.
I said I'd have Andrew Carnegie's book. You know that book?
Which one? How to make friends and influence people? Yeah.
Because that book would keep you alive longer than any survival tool or gun or anything else. Because if you can influence people, you can show mutual interests. You're not arguing and fighting over supplies. Humans will evolve naturally with each other because there's no controlling system. They're always talking about, oh, the levees break,
dude.
this breaks, that breaks. It's going to be anarchy. And you always see people, I didn't even know my neighbor. He came out and helped me build back my house. And he came out.
Right.
They're just loving people. There's so many people out there that are full of love. Full.
Yes.
But we get the magnifying glass, right? Let's look at CNN. How many murders are there? How many things, right? What's so low vibration that we can focus on? And then we create it.
Dude, I know it. Well said, dude. Thank you. All right. So I came across, kind of touching on the movie we mentioned an hour and change ago or whatever. So I came across, let me make sure I'm saying this right, podcast guy. He was Martyr Made. And he was on, he was on Tucker Carlson, and they were just a lot of backlash because he's basically pulling the veil back for the first time in this not mainstream, but on his podcast on Spotify. That's the #1 podcast on there. So he's pulling the veil back again. Being a history major in college, I studied this shit, dude. I love war history. I went to this military college, war and history. That's my jam. And I've always, I've studied war and history that 10,000 years, like as wherever it's happened in conflict and chaos, like that's what I've studied. And so I always had questions and different things about World War II. And so he's pulling the veil back on that and questioning the narrative of Churchill, who, what, when, where, like, why'd he do this and this and that? And then what was Hitler doing, and what are these different guys doing? And what would Europe, the world look like if kind of like, speaking to Patton in his comment or quote saying we defeated the wrong enemy. And, even Patton's death is kind of surrounded by a little bit of mystery. So that being said, here, Martyr Made, peeling the onion back on the, called the narrative of the history of World War II. And
specifically
what it would
Churchill,
look like.
right?
Yeah, Churchill, Patton, but he's like very delicately, because
he's extremely controversial.
Yeah, dude, like it's the most delicate tiptoe. I'm like, fuck, bro, because he was there. He was talking to Tucker, like, yeah, if people question the narrative, they're going to prison in other countries, and so here you're not yet. It's just fucking wild. And so, and again, the same thing. So, hey, you're questioning the narrative of what's happening, and then you're going to jail. And so, I don't know how you'd like to proceed, but it's just like there's so much data now, as we were chatting before, of like that. And there's an outlet, and then there's the internet, and there's the information is so much more prevalent now than it was 2008, 2009. I'd love for you to just touch on what you think would be interesting or, wave top from, your perspective.
Well, everything's inverted, right? Like you said, if it's
yeah,
we're an inverted matrix. We are in a matrix, but the problem is we're in the inverted one, right? It's a simulation, but it's a simulation that controls us instead of we control it for having an experience, right? It has a certain line of code and programming, ones and zeros. So it's weird to me, and you can tell me, why is it necessary for Hollywood to come out with another World War II movie to remind us every year, sometimes twice a year, that this thing happened, and to keep the narrative alive for the younger generation over and over and over again?
That's very interesting, huh, bro? Right? I mean, yeah, and
What's
those
the
are the
purpose, and
things.
who are these made for? Because aside from a history buff or someone that's, grandfather, which these individuals are getting old, the ones that
Yeah.
had grandfathers that were in World War II,
Yeah.
you're looking at people who could tell the truth about what happened. They're all kind of dying out. And the shell shock, or didn't call it that back then, but the PTSD, what we call it now, most World War II veterans didn't want to talk about it because they were told to do absolutely atrocious things under the guise that they were protecting their country. But if you look at it, let's look at the mass genocide that occurred of the young population and the ones that knew pre-World War II the truth and had them all eradicated by putting them all going to war, like Smedley Butler said.
Yeah, dude.
War is a racket. Everybody makes money. Everybody makes money that's in the war machine. So my question would be, because it seemed like they needed this again. I say they, just anybody that's about to get exposed for being any kind of what we'll call them masters of industry or genetic controllers of society, whatever you want to call it. They need a war bad because they need a cleansing of these awakened individuals to be wiped out. People were waking up before World War II. In fact, I would say World War I would have never happened because they would have seen the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. It'd be all over TikTok and YouTube and be like, hey, does something feel really weird? Does the shooter is he not dead? Like, it wouldn't happen, right? You wouldn't have at least a billion eyes on it all at once, being able to scrutinize and be able to say, hey, I'm from this place and I'm an expert in this, and this is not how this works. This is AI generated. This is that. You see it all the time. Speech pathologists that say, this person's lying. This person is not, they are not saying what they mean, right? It's all out there. Before it was just in a piece of paper that you paid to be controlled by, newspaper.
Yeah.
So the narrative was very interesting because it's very controversial, because now you're talking about which side was bad. And Patton got a lot of heat for that because he said, wait a second, I've been lied to. And that goes back into military, right? You have leaders, you want to call them leaders, whatever, chain of command. At a certain point, you realize they don't give a shit. Not everyone, but you realize that there's a political construct to it. They get to a certain point, it's a lot of ass kissing, and then they don't really have ethics. It's just following orders, right? You just follow orders, right? That's something I think veterans stand by, is an unlawful order is still unlawful. Doesn't mean I'm going to follow it, because veterans come to a place of they swore an oath. And if someone's going to be like, you need to do this, that goes against the oath, because it's supposed to be for the people, right? By the people, for the people. When you get into a very interesting, very touchy area, because now you're getting closer to the top of the frequency gate, right? Now you're getting closer to the puppeteers when you start to touch on this. And then you can get into all kinds of being called anything and everything, right? Because what's the best way, like a conspiracy theorist, right? If someone says, hey, like Candace Owens, I'm questioning the narrative about what happened in Germany. Yeah. Oh, you're a Nazi sympathizer? Yeah. No, I didn't say that. I'm what? Wait, what? Why can't I question? You don't care about all the millions that were killed? What are you talking about? She's like, I work for PragerU. Like, his heritage. Like, what are you saying? It's like that thing where it's like you question one thing in a bill and say, hey, this is pretty sketch. This is really sus. Like, I don't know about this. Oh, so you want to kill grandma because they focus on the other things in the bill. It's like you have to be about all of this, which isn't how reality really, it's very much how the structure of society is. It's all linear. All buildings are all square, linear.
Yeah.
But in nature, nothing's linear. There is no straight line anywhere in our face and our body, nothing. But we're in artificial constructs everywhere we go. So if I had a narrative about World War II, I would put it in an artificial construct and I would keep telling that lie big, 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 and often, as
Over
often as
and
possible.
over.
I would just keep hammering it home. And that's where truth comes from, right? A lot of people are isolated because they tell the truth. People hate them for it.
Yeah, dude.
Myself included. I had all my social media channels. 2021 was the worst. It's only really started to come to light just recently, actually, because I've been isolated, excommunicated. I had all my social media channels taken down. I had my YouTube was taken down. I had my Instagram taken down for all of this social media guideline stuff, whatever it was with Facebook's guidelines with Instagram. I had 85 followers, and I guess I was really influential with those 85 people. You would think you get to like at least 1,000, and then they're like, "Hey, you're hitting a mark." Dude. It's weird. But some of the things you're talking about with this particular individual, he said
Martyr Maid,
what's his name?
I believe. Yep.
Martyr Maid. I would be interested to see how he it would almost be saying something, and it's more so what he's not saying is what you should be paying attention to.
Oh, that's exactly right. He is tiptoeing on it, and just tiptoeing around it. It is getting just this vitriol, and that's it though. That is exactly what I'm seeing, the collective consciousness right now, that a large percentage, and that's why it's the number one podcast right now, because it's like questioning this narrative of the most significant, call it event, World War II, that has happened. And then it's like, because everybody's seen these documents, there's so much metadata out there. There's so many pieces of circumstantial evidence and that you can extrapolate from and make a decent decision from, that the information that we've been told is incorrect. I mean, and that's the bottom line. And, you can go down whichever rabbit hole that's there. And it's very fascinating, dude. And I think that, again, this is in line with this collective consciousness and this bigger picture here, and maybe to some degree why I wanted to do this podcast that we've chatted about for a while, that to raise the bar, man. Like, how do you fucking do that? Well, again, Dr. Shiva, another kind of good one is like, we talk about the 100th monkey theory. Whatever,
yes,
you talk
exactly.
about the 20% or something like that, right? It's that
on the different
type
islands,
of theory, where it's connected. You don't need an umbilical to be connected to everybody. Like, it's a field, bro. It's like, it's there. Like, there is the synchronicities of us when I'm just like, hey, bro, I text you, and you're just like, bro, I just fucking called you at the same fucking time. It's been a couple of months,
or I call
and we haven't
you
chatted.
And you said, I'll call you, and a text message will come from you just as you say hello. So there's no way you texted me as soon as I called.
Right.
You would just getting ready to. Yeah,
exactly.
That's a unified field theory.
And all of these things, all of this AI, all of these things are kind of budding at the surface. And, same thing of like, where I'm having Blake Fisher thoughts in Bali, like I'm removed literally on the other side of the world from conversations of America and different things, and not really thinking about it. And I will like say something to Kelly, like, Kel, da 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 da, where you're like, that's what Eric Weinstein said, or that's what Joe Rogan and this guy said, that's what Peter Thiel said, or whatever these guys, and you're my decision making. I'm like, well, I have no idea what I'm fucking doing, but something seems right, and so that's that connection. It is there, and I think the more people get that, dude, that connection, that's when then we can raise this, like, the consciousness of everybody to be like, hey, get them out of that scarcity mindset. That will bring us to transcend society of love and compassion.
Yeah, the human race naturally, as a species, without any Sears and Roebuck catalog, I might be dating myself a bit, but without something showing them that someone has something else they don't have, and they just want it because that person has it, instead of it's something they truly desire, or a joy or experience they want to truly have. Like, they're just what they call keeping up with the Joneses. The natural state of Christ consciousness through an empathic human being is an empathic contribution through co-creation and cooperation, not entropy, not competition. Competition is the expression of the ego's own desire for self-validation, not self-validation of you, the self. No, just self-validation of the ego, which is created as an artificial or separate entity, right? Because when that programming takes in and we do something, they're like, why did I get so mad? Why did I do that? Well, it was self-preservation. Yeah. The ego was self-preserving. Not you as the consciousness, you as the persona, which it has now artificially identified itself as and wants you to associate as you. Then there's a trapping. Then we're robotic in our nature. 95% of our subconscious controls 100% of what we're doing. 95% of what we do is controlled by the subconscious.
Yeah.
Which is automatic, habitual. And people say, why did you do that? Or I don't know what made me do it. Well, somebody knows how to influence you very easily because they know your weaknesses and your vulnerabilities. And that's what we say, about radical transparency and authenticity. Vulnerability is your superpower.
Yeah.
That is true, because if we can be vulnerable, then we can actually heal. Then we can actually take ownership and responsibility. Now we're not going to get screwed anymore.
Yeah, dude, exactly. That's funny that you say that, because I just had a buddy of mine that I went to OCS with, and we talk about, he's a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, and he really fucking unique guy. We go back to OCS in 2007, and he talked about vulnerability, and that is how you become a good leader. Because it's like, if this guy's vulnerable with me, hey, here's my failures, here's some things I'm messing up on. Then that Marine who he's leading is going to do whatever he says and follow him. Because that's my thing with the poor leadership in the Marine Corps. What is wrong with all these motherfuckers? Why did they not read that in the leadership manual or the course or the war college? You're like, what's up?
They did everything that was required of them to get into a place of power without dealing with any of the insecurities of not having it. That's the only reason. Yeah. That's every corporate, psychopath, sociopaths go right to the top because they know everything. They know how to fake it. They know how to tell people. I call it parroting. They can just figure out what you need to hear, and they'll tell you what everything. There are male and female narcissists that's like they all go to the same school. They're so good at it. They figure out what makes you tick, what are your likes, what are your dislikes. They find out your favorite color, everything. And then they just parrot the ideal partner, and they become that. And then then the person, myself, is just convinced that this person is just a sweet, wonderful person. And they're controlling everything I do through manipulation, coercion, and all those kinds of things. I was like, oh my God, it's like a dominant submissive relationship, and they're the submissive one, but they're topping from the bottom, right? Like they're the ones in control. It's a lot like how the monarchs, a lot of the female monarchs were in control, and they just let the king think he was just the best and was his idea, and they knew exactly how to run circles around everything, right? Because it's that magnetic energy, the feminine energy.
Exactly.
Because now we're jumping into duality. Now we're talking about masculine and feminine balance. And people go, masculine and feminine, that's male, female. No, it's not. It is not. People always go, it's because of your male energy. It's because of your female energy. If a man possesses any kind of feminine energy, that's your Zen, right? And then your call signs, right? Call signs is an identifier. Call signs is that stoic, what do you stand for? What's your label? And Zen is this very magnetic, very creative, very feminine energy, right? So if a man says, well, I'm just in touch with my you're getting in touch with your feminine side, or you female? No, we have masculine and feminine energy from our sacral chakra, and the programming of either too much dominance in either creates an imbalance, right? It's like a metronome. And the pendulum's just being held one side and then it judges the other side kind of thing. Think of the because we are electromagnetic beings. Masculine is the electric. That's the charge. right? That's the thing, that the executive part. And then you have the feminine energy, which is the magnetic part. We have to be in balance with those two things because that's who we are naturally. We're bioelectromagnetic beings. We're operating off of vibration and frequency. So if someone is saying, I can't do that for whatever reason because that's too girly or too feminine or too whatever, right? Okay, we'll just here's the trans agenda. Now you can do whatever.
Yeah.
Then you have people rejecting it and going, you know what? Okay, I need to look at this now. I need to look at like what is in me that has more of a feminine nature, meaning what is that creative side? All artists have a very strong feminine energy, right? But why is art not taught in schools anymore for the most part in high school? Because all of that stuff isn't really controllable. And when they tried it, students left. You know, the ones that stayed gave up art because it's like, you have to do it this way and you have to do it that way, right? Same way with mathematics, can only be done this way. But you have these brains that go, well, there's multiple ways to get to the same, you know, outcome, so to speak. But then what if we get it to a new outcome and it's better? That's outside of the realm of order, which means that's completely masculine dominated energy. Means it's only the known. We don't get anything in life if we don't go to the unknown, right? We just keep using the feminine energy to attract what we don't want, right? And then we get split and divided. It's this side, it's that side, it's the masculine energy, it's my partner's fault, it's this person's fault. All of that is a completely controlling mechanism because now we're seeing relationships as separate from ourselves instead of a reflection of ourselves. That's what we talk about in the book. All the programming factors of the chakras create the relationship. We talked about that before you started doing art.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because there was this part of you that was like, can I be an artist? Because someone somewhere said, nah, you can't.
That's that programming of probably primacy. Something out there being like, nope, not good or whatever. Wild how influential that is. And maybe it was an insignificant event. You know, maybe you didn't remember it, but it indelible, crazy how it works like that.
Mm-hmm. And when you did it, you just had this thing, this voice that it felt like it was your voice. Can't do that. Can't do this. The programming had a source and you weren't even sure what the source was.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So it's like that piece that says, oh, well, I can't do it. Well, why can't you do it? Well, it's just not done that way. You ever hear some of the baby boomer generation, World War II veterans say, oh, it's just not, you can't do it that way. Why? It's just, that's, or a very religious person. No, that you can't, that goes against God. Why? How's that hurt God? Oh, that goes against the Bible, or that goes against no, it doesn't. It goes against your beliefs. They don't believe it. So you can't believe it because if it works for you, they can't live in a reality where that's possible because that's impossible. Like the people when the trains first came out, they're like, you can't go on a train. It'll go 60 miles an hour. And they thought women, like, because they thought women were fragile, they thought like their bodies would explode or something in a train. They thought their brains would literally like shake out of their heads. They're like, you can't go 60 miles an hour. That's impossible. Horses can't even go that fast. You know, it's
that's funny. Yeah.
All of these impossible things, though, I don't think anyone ever told you the odds. All you had is one person that said, I believe you can do it. He said, well, why can't I do it? And then you would tell me, well, because, you know, this and this and this and that. And I said, who told you that? Well, and he went back and said, oh, I guess my childhood. And I guess then I had this. You started to recall experiences. That's called origin of the root. Your identity was completely programmed, whether you realized it, because someone who believed they weren't God or connected to God in any way, and it was outside of themselves, told you, you're not God, you can't do it, so it's impossible.
Yeah.
Basically, I can't do it, so you can't do it, right?
Indeed. I know,
you look at the people that tell you how to do things, the loudest people tell you should run a podcast a certain way, or you're doing it wrong. They don't even have a podcast. They don't have any followers. They are just there to critique and complain because if someone else can do it, they're jealous or insecure, whether they realize it or not, of your success. Yeah. And talk about a transformation. The podcast didn't start till you left and went to Bali. You finally made this happen. I mean, how many years is this in? I mean,
I bought the domain
a decade.
I bought the domain 4 or 5 years ago. I forgot. I've got to look on my my host. But yeah, something like, well, at least probably before that, I don't know, whenever I probably told Kelly and you and maybe a few other people, like, I'm going to do this thing. Yeah, it in the fucking
Right?
works for a while.
Who do you not tell? The people that you look up to, the people that are like, hey, people who have a podcast, most likely they'll tell you, oh, you don't want to do that. Yeah. You know, or even the ones who have nothing. They're like, don't start a podcast that won't make any money. Oh, is
Yeah,
that what this was for?
yeah, exactly. And I did hear that where it's like, but I was like, I know I'm not doing that for the money. I'm just doing that because I like to do that shit. I think that's the idea. It's like, that's it. That's the only reason you should do anything, because you like it or you love it, or probably because you love it. That's it, dude.
It starts to generate something for you. How many people
Right.
told you can't make money making art? And you're like, I'm just doing it because I love doing it. And then you decided, hey, I'm going to slap a price tag on it, see if anybody finds it valuable. And people are like, oh my God, that's amazing. I want that.
Right.
You were just doing what you love. You were just like, oh,
Right.
You're like, I'm producing art. I don't know if if anyone will ever buy it. I said, you don't know it's not that you don't know that anyone will ever buy it. You just don't know if you ever put a price tag on it. See if anyone will ever buy it. It's throwing that out in the ocean, right? Oh no.
Yeah, you circling back around what you said before of, like, you said something about entrepreneurs, whoever was like, I just never listened to anybody say anything about it. I didn't care about the odds. I'm just doing it. There's no other, like, and give a fuck. It's like, I don't give a fuck about anything else. Zero fucks given, as I was say, my bros would say in the Marine Corps, and it's the same thing. And that's the same thing of, like, that operating. How are you going to operate your life? Right. Hey, that's it. Suffer, endure, work, keep on going, man. Advance with love and compassion. And I think I've said the other part enough times.
The compassionate action, because there's a compassion to an extent, and then there's action on your part. Like, I'm going to take this weapon away from you because I don't want you to hurt me, kind of thing, right? Meaning, not necessarily a physical one, but disarming them boundary wise. No, I show up for this. I don't show up for that. So that kind of level of compassion action is like, it is compassionate to have that empathy for them, right? But that doesn't mean you're here to sympathize with them and then be their doormat or their, scratching post or whipping child or whatever, that kind of thing. And that compassion action is so missing. It is so missing in the spiritual community, because I see a lot of spiritual communities that are broken systems for broken people. And they attract broken people thinking that the guru or the leader or whatever is going to have all the answers for them. And that's one of the things that we touch on in the book, and we touch on in our group and our tribe and, at Eden Lodestone is, I don't say I have the answers. We're here for you to empower yourself to find self-mastery. I've always been about that with you as well, right? And you say, hey, I'm into this and I want to do that. And I was like, not really my thing, but do it, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to be that. That's where like-souled minded individuals start to co-create together and collaborate and build beautiful things and create art in a way of contributing to the empathic nature of humanity, instead of consuming one another and consuming products and consuming this endless pit of worthless stuff to fill a void that never will be filled, right? It's the next door neighbor that just bought the new BMW and has to get the next model because the next person out there and the place he works, everyone else drives a BMW and everyone else has the next model, or the CEO drives this. Oh, one day I'm going to run this company. Some of the drive for people, like, they walk in, they're like, I want to run this company. I want to go to the top. They don't even know why they want to go to the top. They think if they get to the top, they'll be successful. It's lonely at the top though, right? Because if they even get there, most of the time, as Matthew McConaughey would say, don't ever do anything in your life that you're going to have to look over your shoulder for the rest of your life. That's how to get to the top most of the time, because the top, what's the point? Isolation's a choice, but it's normally forced upon people to tell the truth. Then they start to resonate with the reflection in themselves, like I started to, and you were attracted into my life. And you're an authentic person. You ever see those people? Oh, I have lots of friends. Do you have anybody you can trust? Because somebody that has lots of friends has 0 people they can trust. I promise you that. I promise you that. I have you. Yeah, I got you. Like, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's one person I can trust. Right. And does that make me vulnerable? Perhaps. But at the same time, the reality has been created for so long that there's a community that's building around this. You and I have talked about this unification of humanity. They talk about it. It's syntropy, but they talk about it in the AI world of the merging with machines, right? They talk about the singularity, but that's just the inverted desire for something that's naturally happening. You always have to have the artificial desires, the monster, right? Yeah. Sense something that's already happening and presented it like, well, your savior Messiah isn't Jesus. Choose Jesus, right? Or you can choose the machines. Same outcome. It's still a savior Messiah complex. It's still locked into some external source.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of being the component of that. Does that resonate?
Yeah.
Going back to the Christ consciousness.
Tell everybody where they can find you on any social media, your website, about your book, what you're doing to kind of wrap it up. That'd be great.
So we're located at EdenLodestone.com. It's called the Creative Hub for Humanity. The Creative Haven House is what we've relabeled it as. And we mean that by it's a haven for creatives. And I say that because every natural human, authentic human is creative in nature. They're creators, and a creator wants to be creative. So because we're connected to the creator inside, we have to have our expression of source, which is unique. Everybody has their own unique expression. So Eden Lodestone is our ultimate unlimited streaming platform where we're producing books, interactive books where you can play music in the book. There's a narration in the book. We just released The Divine Quest, and that is available on Eden Lodestone through our subscription program, as well as this week it will be available on our bookstore at edenagencypublishing.com. And we're going to have all our books there for sale that you can buy outright. The tribe, Eden Lodestone is our tribe, our tier system where you're going to get access to all of the books. I'm creating interactive albums where you're going to have like a flip book kind of thing, but it has a story in it of each song, as well as the song itself. And the subscription base allows you to get access to all of our personal things. So as creatives, right? So we have our Divine Quest, which is your soul path, how to clear your chakras, how to figure out what it is that makes you who you are. And we break it down into these very distinct chapters, going through introducing what we call the quantum keys. Each key has a correlation to each chakra. And the book breaks it down very easily because you can read along with the narration. You push the button and listen to the narration. You go through it. What that has allowed us to do is to step into the next book that we're writing, which is called Becoming the Game. So first we were a pawn of the game. That's being unconscious, and that's being controlled by the Matrix game.
Yeah.
Becoming the game is moving into the next set of quantum keys, these chakra keys, which allow you to not just manipulate the game, but become the game itself. Meaning you're dissolving the inverted matrix because it is a artificial representation of a collective consciousness as us. Because we've done this, we were able to move, that's what we call the soul purpose. Our soul purpose, because the pain leads to the passion. Because we've done this, we've each been able to move out of our normal careers. I was a personal trainer, like I said, for almost 15 years. That wasn't my path at all. My passion, and my passion has always been, which helped me heal from my trauma, was music. I always liked this beautiful angelic music with this synth kind of thing that I could feel this frequencies in my own chakras. And I use that to heal myself. I use that to heal through my traumas and create self-reflection. Motherella, she always wanted to be a writer, but she's been, a doctor, and, she left that practice, and she's a psychic as well. And she's evolved in that as well. So the subscription group, we have all the books for sale a la carte on the Eden Agency Publishing. And then the subscription group basically gives people access to different tiers. One being like most of our spiritual stuff is in the Solation tier. And then tier 2, and then tier 3 is all of the stuff we're producing as creatives. So it's all of the fantasy novels, it's the albums, it's the synthwave stuff, which I love. It's the cyberpunk stuff. And they're each going to have stories produced by Eden Agency Publishing. And you and I were working on an album. That's going to be something when you get some more of your art pieces together. I know you have a lot of things, mulling around in your head. But these interactive albums, the audio books, the videos, all of those things is our platform. And the platform draws you in with all of the cool stuff we create, right? Because it's like there's all kinds of content creators. We are not content creators. We're artists. We're writers. We're musicians. We're not here to have content that you consume. We're here to create art that you experience, that shifts and changes you through the music and through the vibration and through the beauty of how the art's placed. It's all very purposeful, and it all connects with the empathic soul. In doing that, we're inspiring other people that are like, I want to do this. I love this story. I love this. How can I do what I love? Yeah. Well, the Divine Quest starts to show you, well, here's the person that you've been programmed to be. Here's how to unprogram that. Here's how to get through. Here's how to shift all that so you can start doing what we're doing. As you stated earlier about leadership, we don't tell people how to fucking live their lives. We don't tell people the right way to do it. We don't tell them you can't do this or can't do that. We don't tell them you have to leave your religion and join our Eden Lodestone thing, right? Because we're not a cult. We tell people, here's how we did it. Here's what we're doing. If you want to contribute, if you want to be a part of that, if you want to collaborate, if you want to start to inspire the creator in yourself, if you're not doing what you love, that pain's going to keep building up until it's absolutely unsustainable to keep doing what you hate. What do they say? They say there's the change occurs when the pain of not changing exceeds the pain. Yeah, something to that degree. Change occurs when the pain of not changing exceeds continuing to do whatever continuing to do, not change. That is the whole part of, okay, how can I show up as an authentic being, right? How can I show up and say, here's what I created, here's what I use, here's my music. It's from me. It's what I'm contributing. It's me being authentic, and it's my devotion to what I love and what I like. It's me expressing the highest, most powerful thing a being can do is express their God source energy as their unique expression of God, right? Because that's a child of God. There's that expression. Well, here's the expression of that, to the point where you can't do anything and it not be spiritual, because we are spiritual beings with the human experience, right? So people want to pigeonhole it into religion, or do you do yoga? That's considered spiritual. Or you do this. What if something as simple as, going to the beach is spiritual? What if something as simple as just being present in the moment is spiritual?
Right.
What if two beings coming together in a sexual interaction is spiritual? Because they're coming together authentically, right? That's the whole purpose of our platform. Because as you know, when anybody engages with any of our artwork and any of the things that we produce, it changes them. And it's not because we're manipulating them. It's because there is a frequency involved, which is a soul consent, where the higher self says, I'm ready for this. And then people start to realize, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, but I'm feeling this way because X or Y happened and my life's falling apart, and this resonates. Suddenly it resonates, and their higher self is walking in. Their higher self is becoming engaged, and they're starting to they can't get enough of this stuff because it's that, Carl Jung. It's that man in search of his soul. Everyone is soul searching more than ever, and all they're really finding is there's a lot of bad in the world. There's a lot of evil, and there's a huge agenda to enslave and control everyone, and everyone's getting kind of stuck down that rabbit hole, not coming back up for air. And there's those of us who've been down every possible dimensional rabbit hole, at least the topic, have come back out and said, here's where you want to go. Here's where you go too far. It'll psychologically mess you up. So stay in this area, just a recommendation, because everything's working out. You're creating your own reality, and it all starts with each one of us. Like the 100th monkey thing. If I'm a server farm with my program that keeps the matrix going, and I clear myself and I become self-aware and I become sovereign. So as I said, that's all at edenlodestone.com,
Yeah.
as well as the Eden Agency Publishing.com.
Nice.
That's where our bookstore is. And then you can look at our really cool collab. I think I should throw that out there. Shout out for you and I that work together on the Many Lives of Manifestations. My Instagram is at RuneSage Music, and you can check that out. Look at Blake Fisher and I's collaboration together with my music and his art. Turned out pretty freaking amazing because it's telling a story, and I think I feel the story, and I think a lot of people resonate with it. It's probably one of the most viewed, watched things since we did that collaboration. I hope we do a lot more of those too.
Yeah, dude. Are you on?
So other than that,
are you on Spotify as well for your music?
So I am on Spotify.
Okay.
RuneSage on Spotify. Okay. The Spotify community is very rapidly being demolished and taken down. So I will put a few things up there still.
Okay.
But that'll just be promotions for my albums that I'm coming out with. I have an Angel Wave album coming out that is very powerful, meditative. Like I was talking about that, like angelic, puts you in a whole nother, a lot of the, I guess for lack of a better term, new age stuff that came out in the 80s and 90s and stuff like that, that were very popular as some I grew up on and something I absolutely love. And so now I'm producing and creating the music that I loved and grew up on. And I never considered doing that. So I will be putting some things up on Spotify. It's RuneSage Music or RuneSage. That's my artist name. But I've been thinking about pulling the whole collection off or pulling the whole catalog off just because they are some pirating bastards. And I think they're going to get in trouble legally. But all of the albums and music and stuff, we built our own platform for that.
Okay. Awesome. Well, bro, thank you very much for being on, and thank you for your time.
Congratulations. Awesome we should pop some champagne, the longest podcast ever.
Yeah, dude.
I'd said if we ever do a podcast together, we can start at 8 a.m. and end at 9 a.m. the next day.
Maybe, dude. I'll see. If maybe we'll break it up.
Maybe that's what you meant by an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., but it was actually the next day. So
yeah,
I appreciate you. Appreciate your time. Thank you for having me on your amazing podcast, Zen and Callsigns. Long time coming. So happy, dude. So proud of you. Can't wait to see more art coming out. So thanks again.
Thank you, brother. All right. See ya.
Always a pleasure. Bye.